This is the Conservation Commission meeting beginning at 6:30 p.m. on 6/10/19. And we have 5 members here, Dan Doyle, Jane Blood, Dan Pearson, Ron O'Reilly, and myself, Julian Case. So the first item on the agenda is notice of intent 250-1040 for Michael Trowbridge of Hutchins Trowbridge Associates concerning 306-308 East Main Street. It is continued from 4/29/19. The project involves proposal to construct an addition to warehouse, detention basin, and grading within 100 feet of bordering vegetated wetlands, and we have a representative of the project? No?
No, they asked for a continuance to July 8th.
All right.
I'll make a motion to continue file number 250-1040 to July 8th.
I'll second.
Dan Pearson makes a motion and seconded by Gene. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Next item is notice of intent 250-1037, next grid Redwood for 54 Plain Street, and it appears this is also going to be a request for a continuation.
Unless they're here. I don't expect them to be here. They just gave the packet to our peer reviewer last week, and he didn't have enough time to finish the review, so they would be continued to the next meeting.
To the next meeting, that would be 6/24.
Yeah, they didn't give us a date, so I would just put them on the next meeting.
All right, consider a motion.
I motion we continue 250-1037 to 6/24.
Motion made by Dan Doyle, seconded by Dan Pearson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. We have notice of intent 250-1034, Mass Department of Transportation, East Main Street, concerning the Route 123 Elm Street to 495 overpass. Do we have a representative of that project?
Yes.
This is, of course, a continued hearing, most recently from 5/20/19.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Jim Crouch. I'm a senior environmental scientist with Vanessa and Russ. We're the engineers designing the project and getting the permits for it. The project is sponsored by Mass DOT. It includes a section of Route 123 from Pine Street in. We've already gone through this once, but it was a fair length of time ago, so I figured I'd give you a little rundown again as to what the project's about. So it starts here at Pine and Elm Street and heads east towards the 495 interchange and incorporates a bit of the interchange. It involves improving the roadway surface, putting sidewalks on both sides, putting a new drainage system throughout, making a consistent roadway width, adding shoulders to provide bike accommodation along the corridor, and then at the end down near the interchange, there'll be a new bioretention basin installed for stormwater management for some of the project area. We've done as much as we can do on this project in that regard. There are deep sump hooded catch basins being installed throughout. I believe it's like 57 of them, I think, throughout the project. And then, of course, we've got a bioretention area that we're going to be adding at the far end of the project. Will incorporate about an acre of watershed from the roadway, both from the interchange, a small part of the interchange, but mostly from the roadway itself. So we have presented the project to the peer reviewer. We met with your peer reviewer last week, or the week before, I guess. And we got one round of comments we responded to, and then we had essentially another round of comments that were more or less just a rehash or a summary of what we had done before. And we actually sat down and went through all that with him and with Jennifer. We provided another letter, sort of responding again to the comments and summarizing the results of our meeting, and I thought we had a very productive meeting. I can go through those responses if you would like, or if you have any specific questions you want to go to, we can go straight to that.
I think it's appropriate just to go through what we talked about at the meeting.
Okay.
Just narrow it down to that and what changes you made to the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are some changes as a result of our meeting and discussion. The first item addressed initially was a series of existing outfalls that were either damaged or filled with sediment or in need of attention. Mr. Chessier identified a bunch of them, and we went through each of these items that he included. One was a catch bait. The first one was an outfall that's actually off the project area. So it's really outside of our jurisdiction for this project, for the limit of work on the project, which is right here. The next one was he's at the Rumford River. Now these are the project plans. We provided revised plans with changes based on our comments, based on our discussion. The first one is the flared end section on the southwest side, which is over in here. The outfall actually is right here, I believe it is. And there's some concern about the outfall being broken in a not a great condition. Unfortunately, also, when we met, we went through the schedule for the project. This project is obviously an important project for the town. It's going to be advertised this fall.
July.
July.
July 27th.
That'll take some time to negotiate the contract with whoever the prospective contractor is. And then the first thing they've got to do is some utility relocations, and both overhead and underground utility relocations to get everything basically out of the way so we can then come back and redo all the drainage that needs to be done. The utility relocations are going to take about 3 years. So before any work actually gets started on the roadway project itself, all those utility changes have to happen. I've seen projects where they widened the road and the power lines, poles were still sitting in the middle of the road for a year, waiting for the power company to come in, or the telephone company to come in and actually move their wires so they could actually pull the pole. DOT doesn't work that way anymore. They want the utility work done first, so you don't have that situation develop. So what this means is, for this flared end that has some issues down here, the contractor will not start any actual roadway work, drainage work, and so forth for like about 3 years or so. It's going to be a little while. So we talked about that with Jennifer and thought that the best thing to do, if there's an interest to get this repaired sooner, is to talk with the highway department and have them handle it as a maintenance issue.
So Gene, the issue is that the culvert itself, like you're replacing all of the piping and all of the drainage
Right.
to that point, but the last pipe that discharges to the
Actually,
wetland
if I
is
can-
not going to be touched?
These dark squares you see here, those are new catch basins that are going in, but the piping in between, this piping here will be replaced, but there's not new piping here, and then the actual piping out to here
Okay.
is not planned to be replaced. It's a kind of a composite of In some cases, we're using the old pipes, in some places, we're actually removing them and putting new pipe in.
Okay, and Chessia's comment was that some of those outfalls are broken, or they're not existent, or they're filled with sediment, and they have observable erosion and sedimentation at the end pipe. And so the commission and Chessia's comments were, we should really have that fixed while we're doing all the rest of this road work, because once you clean out those culverts of all the sediment, you have all new drainage and it's gonna be shooting right through and it could cause more erosion. So your DOT is saying that's District 5's issue and the town's
Yeah.
issue to deal with,
Jennifer.
not,
Hi,
Yep.
Joe Yu,
Yep.
Mass DOT Stormwater. If
Yep.
I may just interject a bit, in regards to the outfalls and the culverts, we have been in contact with the District 5 maintenance engineer,
Okay,
Daniel
great.
Vieira.
Yep.
And they have been notified of the existence of these outfalls, and the district maintenance engineers will go out there, investigate, and pursue
Okay.
follow-up measures.
Okay, so will they call us to do a joint site inspection?
If you would like, you could be copied on.
That would be great.
For clarity, will they be doing the ones within the town land?
Oh, no, they'll be doing the ones within the state highway layout.
Okay, so state,
Though, so that's at the interchange specifically?
just at 495,
At
not the one at the
495.
Rumford River, just the one at the Canoe River.
At the Canoe River,
Okay.
correct. And so,
Okay.
the tone was the urgency
Yep.
of getting this work done, so
Yep.
that's why we weren't sure if the town forces could do it for the, or,
Or wait until the project comes
Yes.
several years from now. That was the concern.
Okay. And the work isn't gonna start for at least 3 years, but the wetland permit's only good for 3 years. So are you asking for a 5-year permit?
We'll probably either that or we'll get an extension. The concern, the problem is they can't go to bid without the permit.
Yep.
And even if the project takes longer than 3 years, we still need the permit up front to be able to go to bid for the project.
Okay.
So we will have to come back to the town for an extension, my guess, even if it were a 5-year permit.
Okay, thanks.
Can
Yep.
I ask, can you issue a 5-year permit?
Under certain circumstances,
Because-
if it meets the definition, then we can do a 5-year permit. We'll have to go back and read that section and make sure it fits. If it does, we will typically do a 5-year permit. If it doesn't, then like Gene said, he'll just come back and ask for an extension.
Because they did ask us to change all the easements, temporary easements from 3 years to 5 years.
Okay, yeah, I mean, most of the time we write it as a 5-year if they qualify for it and we think it'll be necessary. All right, thanks, Gene.
Okay. At Station 58, bear with me when I try to find that second. Actually, it's on the other sheet. The plan set is fairly, it's a long project, so I've broken this into 2 sections here, just because I didn't think they'd all, the clips would hold them all up, all the sheets.
58's at the rail trail, right?
It's just a little bit west of it, very east of
Okay.
it. This is Station 58 right here, and the comment is,
So, just sorry to interrupt you, Gene, but just so people know where we are, it's just
yeah, here's the rail trail.
from the rail trail, the hump. Okay.
It's not actually a rail trail
Right,
yet, but
it-
I'm sure everybody knows it that way.
It's the hump. Everybody-
Exactly. First time I drove over, it was pretty obvious.
Yeah.
So in Station 58, right here, there's a head wall that is just at the edge of the road. This is a residential property, and it appears to be, it was unclear whether it's taking water into the system off of the property or it's discharging water onto the property from the roadway. And we looked at that, and that was one of the questions with Mr. Chessie, is whether or not if we're planning to take that head wall and pipe out. And his concern was if we took it out, we're taking away the way water can get off the property. But our analysis is showing that the water actually is coming from the road onto the property. So by taking it out, and then also the road all through here will, as you can see, there's more catch basins coming in here, and this will be curved, so that all the street drainage will not be going onto his property anymore like it does now. It'll actually come down and get discharged adjacent to this wetland at this new outfall location. So in this case, we've got solid lines through here. So these are all new pipes, new catch basins, new manholes, and so forth coming down for that outlet.
Okay. And that outlet, originally the wetland wasn't on the
Yeah.
plan, it's on the plan now, and then at the meeting, we asked you to pull it back further
And we
so
did.
it wouldn't be right against the wetland, and now you have how far away?
It's, how far back did it go now? You know?
10, maybe? Is it 10?
It's at least that, because all the splash pads, we've expanded to 8 feet.
Okay.
So in this case, you can see there's still some separation even with that splash pad.
I think it's 15 feet.
Yeah, it was quite a
Okay.
bit.
Thank
And
you.
we were able to do it and still use a flared end even with the grade. The concern is there's some fairly steep grading on this side along the bike path.
Yep.
And as you can see, we have to grade, we're pulling back into some, it's a little bit higher as you get closer to the road. But we were able to make the grading work without having to put in a wall.
Excuse me. That pipe you want to take out,
Please identify yourself.
Keith Silver, the highway superintendent.
Thank you.
I called last week on that,
Okay,
and they said they were gonna replace that with a cement pipe. That's galvanized right now.
right.
I don't think that's a good idea, taking that out and leaving it out.
The pipe itself is coming out, and the drainage will then be going this way. If you feel that there is some drainage going into that, the grades, based on the pipe inverts and the drainage inverts the way they are now, it indicates that water is going onto the property, not into the.
I know what you're
drainage
saying.
system.
I don't know.
Are you concerned the neighbor's gonna be flooded?
Well, yeah, when we got a lot of rain, it floods over there. I mean, it's
Well, that may
pretty
be
bad.
partly because he's currently receiving road drainage onto his property, and he won't in the future.
But I don't know
Are
what's.
we talking in this, we talked last week.
Yeah.
Susan Grummer, VHB as well.
Thank you.
And were we talking about that
I
location?
was talking about this location. I know the neighbor had a little concerns with it, and town manager had concern with it.
One of the problems would be that because of the, I don't know that water would be able to get into the system because of the inverts of things. If we were to match this invert, it might not actually flow into the system, but it might flow out of the system onto his property.
Did anybody walk it to see where?
Yep. We had one of our water resources engineers went out and looked at this when this first came up. He was out there in the rain, and it was his opinion. It's kind of hard to tell from the old plans, but his opinion was it was an inlet to the system, not an outlet.
Jean, can you think of a condition that you might have a contingency for that, if something happened there that we can add?
I don't know, I'm concerned that, I would be concerned that if we actually tied it into the system, that it might actually receive water rather than take it away from its property. Sir, Susan, you got any ideas on that?
I'm looking.
We may have to think of a condition for that. So.
I can't see the invert of that outlet pipe, but the rim, I mean, the invert out of 57. Is it 8366? So the outlet water going out this way, leaving this system at this point is 8366. If we couldn't, if his land is lower than that, we wouldn't be able to get water into it. It would go, it would unfortunately go the wrong way.
So after it's constructed, do you have somebody go out and monitor it?
The property?
I mean, your resident engineer is gonna be out there, but
Right.
at what point is he gonna, or she, gonna go out after that's constructed and make sure there's no flooding issue for that person? And if something needs to be changed, be able to make the change then before the road's paved, not years later?
There can be field changes, obviously. We don't like to do that too much, but obviously, field conditions develop, that things have to change. Certainly, there is a resident engineer on this project who is a DOT employee who is there to oversee the construction of the project and the contractor. We could make that a specification to check this out during construction to make sure that this is not causing problems to the landowner.
Did our consultant have any comments about this?
Oh, yeah, no, he thought the water was going the other way onto the property as well.
So he.
I mean, the inverts say it doesn't, but when you go out there and look at it, it doesn't look that way, so.
So what he's supporting then is the DOT's design, is that correct?
He had the same concerns Keith has,
Oh,
yeah.
that,
But once the road has the curb, it may not get that water. We just need a what-if condition, so
Well, not only.
if it really doesn't work that way, we can fix it quickly without,
Not only is it the curbing, but there is a catch basin here
Yep.
that was actually connected to that. So even if the water couldn't just come directly off the road, it was getting there through a catch basin within the road.
I was just worried about being an equalizer pipe, but,
Yeah.
I mean, I know that it has no drainage system there now. I know it's gonna be better when it's done. It is, I just don't want the phone calls if it's something that's happening.
Understood. I hear you. But we can put an item in the specifications that this be specifically looked at.
okay.
During construction. Taking that note. Okay, in the vicinity of 6350, there's a proposal to construct a new flared end on the south side of the roadway. It's gonna be further down. Just on the sheet.
Yeah, the next, yeah, with the fill and the replication and, yep.
This we've changed quite considerably. Originally, there's a cross culvert here now. It's a corrugated metal, that's coming out. We're gonna replace it, same size pipe with a ductile iron. There's not a lot of cover right here, so it's gotta be a little beefier than just a concrete pipe.
clarification, where is this spot? Roughly, I mean, it's further along toward the 495 interchange.
It's closer
From-
to it.
Well, there should be a house number on there, right, Gene?
House number
Is it-
154?
Is it beyond Washington Street?
No.
No.
Okay,
Just
so it's still
before.
approaching.
Washington
Okay.
Street is the next sheet right there.
Okay. All right.
So it's just before Washington Street.
That's the one I was talking about.
That's what I thought.
You're talking about the older pipe down before that. See, from here, I couldn't tell where you were.
Oh, okay. This is the one you were talking about?
That's the one I want,
Yeah,
yes.
we're definitely replacing that. It's,
Yeah.
you're right, it's CMP.
That's the one I was worried about. The other one, yeah, it's probably, I think someone just put that in there years ago for,
Right.
that's the one I,
Yeah, in fact, on that one, well, I think it's gonna be better over there for the landowners.
yeah, well, it will, but this one here is the one I'm concerned about.
Yeah, so what we're proposing here, this is a little bit different. we talked about this, this is a corrugated metal pipe. It goes from this point there to that corner of the wetland, and it flows in this direction. We're proposing to put the pipe a little offset from it, just because there's so much wetland in the area. And it will have the same inverts, so that it will operate in the same way. So we're not lowering, if we lowered this invert, we might sort of drain this wetland, lower the water level in the wetland. We don't want to do that. Originally, we were bringing a drain, we've got a new drainage system here. We've got these pipes here, and we were bringing an outlet into this portion here, dumping water into here, and it would go over here, and right next to it, and go out that pipe. We've since changed that and are now bringing it to a couple of manholes, and then bringing it into the same sort of inlet as the cross pipe. So, and then this whole area will be riprap for erosion control. Now, we don't really need the riprap for this pipe because this is the inlet, but we do need it for the outlet to make sure that the outlet doesn't erode in its operation. So this will discharge at this point and then either mingle with the water here, because I know this wetland does get very wet and standing. It's not right now, but it basically is flooded. It will either mix with that, or it will be able to just go right across under the road. And as you mentioned, we are impacting a wetland over here. This is our impact area, and this is going to be our mitigation area, where we're going to widen out the grading along the edge of the wetland and then replant that to replace that wetland. So this is the only wetland impact that we have on the project, is that small thing right there. So that's how that works. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay, good. The new flared end at Station 11 in the state highway layout. We're going past Washington Street. And into the interchange. Station 11 is right here, so I'm pretty sure he was talking about this one. This is the new detention, bioretention area that will be constructed. It's actually taking water from both the town road and from the state highway interchange. The town portion of the drainage will be coming in here and into the basin. The state highway will be coming into here. We separated out the forebays so that the town can maintain the forebay that's subject to their jurisdiction and drainage, and then the state can take care of their forebay. That way, each entity can take care of their own responsibilities. So this actually goes quite a ways upstream, where the new drainage system comes in, and actually it'll discharge to this point. And one of the comments that he had, let me see if I'm reading the right one, if I'm getting a good one.
Get ahead of yourself.
Oh, this one is at,
Well, you're at the broken culvert area anyway.
oh, is that this one here? That's further down though.
Well, the outfalls are pretty much broken, but up on the,
Around in
up
here?
by the forebay, where the pipe is actually
Oh, that's
broken
right.
in the road and the water bubbles out
That's
and
actually
shoots down.
here.
Okay.
There's an outlet pipe right here, there's a manhole, existing manhole with a pipe going out. And somebody apparently drove over the pipe and broke it. So the top of the pipe has got a hole in it and water is coming up and out of it. So the district has been made aware of that.
They're gonna look at that. Thank you.
So they will fix it, and either they're gonna replace the pipe for the time being, or at least get erosion controls around it, because it is kind of making kind of a mess. One of the other questions you had that wasn't part of this was whether the water and so forth that's out here. That's where that water's coming from.
Right.
It drains around here and it sort of puddles out here. Under this area, we had wanted to make this into an infiltration system. so the water would infiltrate into the ground as is required by the stormwater standards. It turns out this is underlain by some extremely hard soil. It's so hard that you can't even dig through it. And it's only like a couple of inches of soft soil on top, and then it's just impenetrable. So we designed this knowing that obviously they're going to excavate this and dig a hole in it. But our assumption is that it's not going to be able to infiltrate because of that soil condition. So what we have is a bioretention area, and then this dashed line would be an underdrain. So we would, it would function as essentially a filter. Water would get in it, it would settle down and get drawn out by this underdrain in time. So it'll drain down between storms. It is not assumed to infiltrate, and we went out to hand dig test pits to see where groundwater was, and we couldn't even get through the stuff. So, so our assumption is that it's not going to function for infiltration at all, and we did not assume that in our designs. I would mention also, by the way, this blue line is the riverfront line, and the green line is the buffer, the 100-foot buffer zone. There is another line on here, it's kind of the same, is the floodplain line here, and then there's one on the other side as well. But we're really not doing anything in floodplain on this project. So the flared end at station 11 is a flared a new outlet on station 14, that's this one. Oh, and this is the one that was identified as broken in plug. And then on the south side of the roadway at station 14, which I believe is this one that he's talking about here, is in bad condition.
Yeah. All the concrete's gone and you're only seeing the rebar.
The rebar is all that's left. So these outfalls, well, except for that one, which is going to be replaced as part of the project, but these outfalls over here, basically all we're doing in the interchange through here is a mill and overlay. This is really, for the state, it was a signal project. If you use this interchange, you probably know that it backs up onto the highway. And so all the work that we're doing here under the state job, all these dashed lines and little boxes, all relate to a signal project. So, you know, a traffic signal will go in here, so it'll hopefully resolve some of the issues that we're seeing. Other than that, the only thing that'll happen up in here is mill and overlay of the existing roadway surface. So once these trenches are put in and the conduit is put in, they'll mill and over to make it a nice smooth surface. So our limit of work is pretty much the paved surface, and anything off the paved surface is out of our project limit. But we have, Joe has said that they've spoken with District 5 about these issues. This is the stuff that District 5 can deal with, because the state highway layout comes out way over to here somewhere. So all this is within state highway layout. The next one is further east. On the east side of the northbound ramp, there's an outlet that's eroded and should be repaired. Again, that's in the same situation that District 5 maintenance has been alerted to this, so that they would take care of it as a maintenance issue. On the north side of the outlet at station 25, further east. Here's 25.
I think you answered most of those, Jean.
Yeah.
All the rest of them are culverts that would be District 5.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. Yeah, and that's actually the last one, yeah. So that would be addressed by District 5 when they take a look at the whole interchange. Question number 2, all outlets should be appropriately sized for flows received and with correctly sized energy dissipated per DOT manner. They have, originally, we had sort of shortened up on them a little bit to 5 feet rather than what the design requirements were of 8 feet, but they've gone back and moved everything out to 8 feet. But at the same time, kept that out of any wetland resource area. 3, all outlets causing erosion sedimentation into the Rumford River should be fixed and erosion mitigated, preventive measures. We talked about that. That would fall within the town's responsibility, and if it were to be done prior to the start of this work, then the highway department should take a look at it. 148 East Main Street outlet needs flow direction. That was the manhole, the head wall flowing out onto the neighbor's property. That was the issue where we said, the flow is correct, it's going into the system, not going off the site. 145 East Main Street, revisions are needed at the wetland. What do we do for that one? Drawing a blank for a second. Apologize. I know we looked at that. So 145.
Station
I think,
56.
yeah, I think you did address those. The
I
only,
thought so.
the only thing you really have left are the draft SWIP. It's just the draft SWIP and the illicit discharge
Oh, okay.
statement, I think are, everything else you've already covered, so.
Okay. The draft SWIP, DOT's requirement is, and they have a spec for this in the document that'll go to the bidders, that the contractor is responsible to prepare the SWIP. Even if we were to prepare it, there is no contractor on board right now, so we have no one to go to. If we were to prepare a draft, it's very likely that they would just throw it away and go have their contractor. So even if we gave you a draft SWIP that we prepared, it's not necessarily the document that the contractor is going to use. DOT absolutely requires, even if we prepared it, that the contractor prepare his own SWIP. What we've mentioned with Jennifer is that included condition requires the draft SWIP to be provided to you so that you can review it.
For, for comment and approval.
Right. And then,
Illicit discharge.
the illicit discharge. Much of the system is going to be new, with new piping, new catch basins and so forth. Some of it is going to retain and reuse the existing pipes. DOT also has a specification that requires the contractor, if he identifies any illicit discharge, to immediately notify the resident inspector, to notify the Conservation Commission. I think the responsibility is also that the Board of Health be notified, because there's a discharge that's not legal. And many of the catch basins, even if the piping is going to remain, the catch basins are going to be removed and replaced. So any kind of flow in the pipes that doesn't belong there will be observed and noted by the contractor, in which case he would notify the resident and the Concom, and that will be included as part of the specifications.
Okay. And can you add highway to that, because the town's illicit discharge requires highway?
Sure. I think, yeah, that was in there, sorry.
Okay.
If the illicit.
It's already there.
It wasn't Board of Health, because that wasn't what the town of Norton's bylaw said.
Mhm.
It was the highway department.
Okay.
We looked it up. And so we have it, contractors to notify Norton Highway Department no later than the next business day in accordance with town bylaws. Additionally, MassDOT resident in the Norton Concom. So, and the town of Norton shall be the responsible party for determination of retaining or removing any discovered illicit connections.
Okay.
It's your decision.
Yeah, right.
That's you.
All right, so.
You can contact the Board of Health.
Yes.
Usually in towns, it's my understanding, the Board of Health is supposed to be notified, because it's a health issue, obviously.
Word will get around. All right, so, are there any questions from specific members of the Conservation Commission? Okay. All right, so any questions from members of the audience?
I just want to thank Jen and
Identify yourself.
Michael Units, Town Manager.
I'm just
I ju-
answering.
I just want to thank Jen and everyone from VHB and the state for getting together and meeting in advance, knowing how important it was that the project wouldn't go out to bid in July. Everyone met to go over all the issues and work on them in advance. And thanks for taking the time to do that.
Many years.
Any other questions? If not, I would set for closing the hearing. Okay. So we can consider a motion to close the public hearing for file number 250-1034. Motion by Ron to close the hearing, seconded by Jean. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed,
Okay,
motion
thank you.
carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dana, you guys are good. You're good.
All right.
It's gonna be a long night. I don't know if you want to wait. The recommendation is to approve it, so. Oh, okay. That helps. You can wait around if you want, but it's gonna be a long night.
All right, speaking of long nights of the setting sun, next item is notice of intent, file number 250-1036, concerning Next Sun Energy on a project at 210 Bay Road. And this is continued multiple times, most recently from May 20th. And I'm assuming we have a representative of the applicant.
I'm assuming we do. If you don't mind, since you're on the end, that'd be nice. Thank you.
Gina?
Thanks.
Ethan?
Just passing around attendance for Bay Road hearing. Around, please.
Deb,
Just make sure they introduce everybody from their team, so we have.
Wow, Deb
it
and
in the
Ken.
record.
That's like,
All right, how are you guys tonight?
good, how are you?
We'd like you to start by introducing every member of your team, and then you can present what you have.
Adam Schumacher with Next Energy, Stacy Mooney with Gilson Thomas, Charles Array with Dane Torpy, and Ian Ward with New England Consulting Services.
Could you just spell Charles's last name so we all have that? Thank you. Thanks.
So we are continuing with a conversation that's been going on for a while. And so maybe you can start and introduce where we
Sure.
are.
Yep, so just to bring us to today, based on the feedback we've received throughout this process, it was clear that there's a concern with the commission regarding the ability to permit the project in an ACEC. And so to essentially take that issue off the table, we've restricted the panels in this alternative plan, which is the basis for the discussion tonight, to only the upland bogs. And so we're hoping that this can make the decision a much easier and simpler one for everybody. And this is obviously a significantly reduced size project compared to what we had presented previously. It's about a 55% reduction in size. And the reason that this will work is because we've worked with the landowner to come to different terms on the land agreement in terms of using a smaller footprint instead of purchasing it. But the only way that that becomes viable is if we know the economics that we'll be working under for the project. And for that reason, we need to have certainty on the economics of the program we'll be in. And so we are in a position where we really need to move forward at this point. And so tonight we're going to respectfully request that you approve this reduced sized project. And Stacy is going to introduce or summarize what we submitted, and there were a couple of minor changes.
So I thought I'd just briefly run through what's been submitted to the commission since the last hearing and then take your direction at what items you'd like me to respond to or focus on. So since our last hearing, starting most recent backwards, on June 3rd we submitted a letter regarding farming practices and how they could continue providing some additional information to the commission. On May 31st we submitted a response to peer review comments that included the information regarding this upland cranberry bog alternative, as well as all of those materials. And also responding to Mr. Garner's comments. And on May 13th, we had issued a letter responding to the Conservation Commission comments from prior hearings. The one design update beyond this alternative change is that at the Mulberry Meadow Brook crossing, the bridge that crosses there, we've gone from a proposed trenched underground electric conduit to an overhead crossing, so putting a pole on either side of that crossing and going overhead there and then back underground. That actually reduces the impacts overall because of the lesser amount of trenching that will be done. In the riverfront area, in the water and water.
Okay, and so you've basically withdrawn the previous plan with solar panels throughout the site, and you're only proposing in the upland box. Is that correct?
Well,
We're asking that you propose this revised plan, and if you do, we go forward with this. If we end up having to go to DEP, we're taking the full plan to DEP.
I'm not sure how you would do that when you need to ask the commission which plan you want us to make a decision on, and then that's the plan that we would make that decision on. And then if you don't agree with that, then you have the ability to go to DEP, but it's not a multiple choice situation here. You provide the information to the commission on which plan you're looking for. We don't design the project for you. We don't choose out of multiple plans. The way the process works is you provide us with a plan that you're looking for, and the commission decides whether it meets the regulations or not.
All right, but
Yeah.
clarify for me. You say two plans. Which two plans?
Last week, they
the
submitted
original
two
plan.
totally different plans.
well,
The upland bog plan plus the upland and the wetland bog
right,
plan.
so
Okay.
this is the same exact thing that has been in front of you for 6 months, just less of it.
As I understand it, these are the upland bogs. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And as I understand it, the current regulations allow this only in previous upland, now created as bogs.
That's one of the questions that's been an issue, I think, and at the last hearing we heard, I believe it was from the chair, indicating that the commission felt it wouldn't be able to move forward with the project, given the ACEC issue, without written, additional written guidance from DEP.
And in all fairness, the discussion is that DEP perhaps is not caught up with changes that happen in reality, and they need to issue regulations that will be guidance, because we can't create new legislation.
Understood.
I mean, that's the position we're in.
Right.
And so this plan being, this reduced size alternate plan being in just the upland areas is meant to address exactly that issue by taking that, the wetland, so just to step back, the DEP guidance is very clear that these projects are allowed in wetlands. The issue has arisen because this wetland is in an ACEC. And so by restricting the panels to just the upland bogs, they are not jurisdictional BPW, and therefore the requirements of the ACEC do not apply to these bogs.
All right, but say that one more time. You're saying there are other projects where DEP has approved in wetland bogs this activity?
Well, that's the guidance that DEP issued in October of 2018 was specifically about dual-use solar project in wetland bogs and allowing for that to happen. We've run.
So the only issue that is different is the activity within an AEC?
AC, correct.
ACE.
Yes. And so this removes that question by taking the wetland bogs out of the equation.
So that's the issue that has to be addressed in the future, potentially.
The wetlands bogs in an ACC,
Yeah.
correct, yes.
But for the purpose of your permit application, this is the plan you want us to review. This is the plan that we're listing in the order of conditions.
Yes.
Okay. So you didn't mention it, but you provided a superseding determination from the town of Hanson. So maybe you want to go over that, and then we can talk about upland bogs, wetland bogs.
Sure.
Okay.
So we received from DEP, I believe the commission has asked us to look and see if we can find any written documentation about the question of what we've been terming upland bogs created out of upland areas, jurisdictional, BPW, and bank. And DEP did provide us with a superseding determination of applicability, indicated it was for a bog in Hanson where a portion of the bog was found to be historically wetland and a portion was found to be historically upland. DEP affirms the delineation of bordering vegetated wetlands per the plans. The plans use a particular line type for bordering vegetated wetland, which is shown for natural wetlands to the north of the exhibit that's included as part of that. And it also cuts through bisecting the bog into the upland versus the wetland portion. In DEP's email to us, they indicated clearly that that determination confirms that upland bogs are not jurisdictional.
As wetland, but that one might have been within buffer zone to another one. I mean, so the
Yeah,
two projects are not,
non-jurisdictional
yeah,
non-jurisdictional BPW.
the two projects are not really comparing apples to apples, but
This
it's
is purely to answer the question of.
just to
is
answer
bog
the upland bog.
constructed in upland
Yep.
a jurisdictional wetland?
okay. So jurisdictional wetland, but then it was silent on whether or not it had bank. So what is your take on that for the dikes?
My understanding is that it would not have jurisdictional bank either.
Okay.
If you don't have jurisdictional wetland created from an upland area, it seems that bank would follow. I have spoken about that on the phone with DEP, which I know is not sufficient for this commission, and they had agreed at the time.
Okay.
And I suppose I would add that particular bog in Hanson, I'm not familiar with it. But it's presumably it has a further ditch, I think most bogs do. So there was no bank delineated on that plan either.
Okay. And And what's the evidence you're submitting that those areas were upland before the bogs were created in those 4 locations?
Sure. So we submitted kind of over the course of the project various historic USGS and aerial maps, and then we compiled that into one packet in our May 31st, I believe it was, letters to facilitate the commission having it all in one location. That also included out of income to the conservation office. We looked at, I believe they were 1985 plans that had been done on this property for the bypass canal to the west,
Yes.
which showed the flow-through bogs and did not show cranberry bogs here. There is a cranberry on those plans as well as the historic mapping that we submitted a ground cranberry bog that was present historically as well. But in all of the mapping that we can find on MassGIS, the historic maps, that area appears to be upland for
Okay.
these, where these 4 bogs are.
All right, so just for the record, just, and Melissa, just so you know, when we say for the record, we just want to make sure we get all of that. We're submitting the copy of the plans from file 250-124, which is the emergency bypass canal. And so that, those plans, it's multiple sheets, has topography of the area at the time of the construction of the canal.
And that topography lends itself to being upland as well. And then I brought copies, Jennifer, since we submitted today. You had asked for an overlay.
Yeah.
We weren't able to provide an overlay on those.
So I had asked for an overlay of what they're proposing on the 1985 topo plans so that we could just confirm that all of it was wetland, it was upland, and some of these smaller areas that show on the topo, we would just need to rule out that those were wetland. So that was the point of seeing if you could get it on the same plan, just to make sure, you know, just if there was 200 square feet of wetland where they created the upland bogs, then we just have to block out the 200 square feet. So that's what we're trying to accomplish with the actual topography, not a USGS, which doesn't have adequate topography. So
So I don't know if you'd like me to hand these out to the commission. We weren't able to do it on those plans just because of the quality of the scans.
yeah,
It started out fairly well lined up to the north, and then through myself just got farther and farther apart, so it made sense of it.
okay. I mean, you can certainly hand them out if you like. I'm not sure that that's helpful, but this is submitted in the record for the commission's deliberation later on. And, sorry, I have this for you, Stacy. So also for the record is Pat Garner's peer review. Sorry, that was a late. I didn't get to read it until 3 o'clock, so I mailed it to you at 4. But you have a hard copy, and then we have another letter from an abutter at 202 Bay Road, just so you have copies of it. Thanks. That's what you got. It is. Thanks, Melissa. So I know you submitted something else, soils related. Do you want to talk about the soil map?
Copies of that, sure. So there are various soils mapped. They do show the upland, or I'm sorry, the circular cranberry bog that I had referenced in some of our earlier correspondence. That is very important to look at the abandoned mapping. So that cranberry bog is mapped with 55A soil, which is a mapped hybrid soil. It's unclear.
That's the
not that
Freetown.
way because Freetown, coarse sand.
Okay.
Because it was a cranberry bog or not.
Okay. But then everything else was a Windsor, a Hinckley, what were the other ones? Because all of those are upland soils. So just do that for the record if you would, Stacy.
Everything else. So within these bogs, it actually was all 215. Yep. It's all Windsor within these bogs, and then within the southwesterly, it's also Windsor.
Okay.
Windsor basically sand and gravel.
That's the
What do you
same,
expect in the aquifer?
that's the same soil that's found up here as well.
And just to clarify, this that you submitted, it looks like it's dated 1944.
Right.
And then these bogs were constructed much more recently than that, is that correct?
Yes, the upland bogs were constructed like beginning of the late 90s.
Yeah,
Through
late 90s
2008-ish.
Okay.
So using the old plan, they're trying to show what was there before the
Yeah.
bogs are actually there. So,
Right.
so these are the questions, you know, these low spots, were they actually wetlands and were they connected? And that's where the topo from the emergency bypass canal, you know, may have shown a connection or shown that those were upland area, wetland areas, not all upland areas. Aside from that, the soils that you're telling us about show it's upland, but where we have these hashed depression areas and connections to the river, the commission would still have to make a determination on whether those small areas were jurisdictional wetlands or not.
I think, Stacy, those were some of the areas that we saw that looked like they were likely excavated
Right.
sand. Or I think some of them, you know, because there was obviously ongoing cranberry bog activity in some of these areas, looked like they could have likely been areas that were mined for sand.
We did review that plan.
Okay. Okay, so if we continue with that assumption that those were upland bogs, not wetland bogs, then maybe go through, just to, because it's a whole new plan, we gotta start all over almost, but go through each resource area that you're impacting now with the reduced plan, and then let's just confirm the quantities.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the quantities that were summarized in Mr. Garner's letter are correct. I believe I've reviewed the entire hearing as
Okay.
well in the table, which makes it easy to recommend. So in terms,
Sorry, I
Yeah.
just wanted to make one more comment about the 1944 map. I think it's somewhat relevant that the DEP superseding order, the delineation that was used in that was also based on the 1944 USGS map. I just wanted to add that. Sorry to cut you off.
Not for us, for Hanson.
Oh,
The one that-
based on that
That was
locality,
the one that-
1944.
Correct.
Right, so
Yeah.
so we did submit a revised notice of intent form, so that you would have the numbers handy in front of you. So, proceeding with that presumption regarding that with cranberry bogs, there would be no bank or BBW impact. Impacts to bordering land subject to flooding are reduced from 41,000 and change to 27,600 square feet. Of that, there's 1,200 cubic feet of flood storage lost, and we maintain the same compensatory flood storage area. So we're proposing 3,560 cubic feet of compensatory storage, so more than what is required. Then for riverfront area, the total impact is 9,500 square feet. Almost 9,400 square feet of that is temporary. I know that actually talks about what's temporary versus permanent, but I think it's helpful to understand what the impact is. For the riverfront area, comparing the trenching, utility poles, panels, those impacts, so everything except the timber mat placement. Timber mats are wood mats that are just placed directly on the bog with no disturbance to the vegetation. So taking the timber mats out of that number, there's a reduction of 700 square feet in the riverfront area impact as compared to the prior full build project. However, we requested a bit more flexibility with the timber mats, and so proposed that we would put more timber mats in the riverfront area at one time and capture that in this 9,500 square foot number.
And the permanent impacts for the piers? For the racking system?
We didn't recalculate, oh, just the pier you want, in
Correct.
your riverfront area?
Correct.
Okay, one moment, I have to look through the impact calculation.
Yeah, the NOI page doesn't include everything we need for the
Right, it doesn't have
order
to break it
conditions
down, yeah.
page, so
Yeah,
we gotta
that's-
just run through it
that's
tonight
fine,
if
we
you're
submitted
gonna
impact calc
close.
For that reason, so for the riverfront area, the permanent impact is, and now again, I round when I report on the form, but 64 square feet. That is from the piles and utility poles, so we rounded to 100 square feet of permanent riverfront area impact.
Okay. So I'm just gonna go back to floodplain again for a minute.
Yep.
So total alteration for utilities, square feet and cubic feet, if you would. So you gave us 27,600 square feet.
Correct.
What's the cubic, if you would?
It is
12, 1,200.
It's 1,200 cubic feet lost,
Okay.
3,560 cubic feet
3560 gained, okay. And so utility and trenching and side casting versus the racking system, or you group those together?
No,
Okay.
see how we separated it. So temporary impacts, which are the trenching, the side casting, and the timber mats, is 27,100 square feet. So those are the temporary. The permanent impacts, which are the racking system, and the utility poles, and the equipment area skid supports, are 500 square feet.
Okay. And then the compensation amount, square feet and cubic feet,
Cubic feet is 3,560.
okay. And what
The
was,
same as the original.
and what was the square
I don't
feet?
have square footage. I don't-
Is that something you can just measure and tell me
Yep.
later? Okay,
Jen, I got the 1944 aerial map on my phone.
okay, thank you. Peter.
Wow. My house, my old yellow house at 135 Bay Road wasn't around yet,
Oh.
Not yet.
until 1970. Oh my gosh.
So what's the square footage that you're looking for on the floodplain? Of the compensatory?
Compensatory storage square foot, yeah.
feet.
These are just,
Because I noticed you didn't supply as much as you usually have, but you overcompensated the cubic.
we overcompensated, right, we overcompensated, so
It
this,
is, yeah.
the square footage?
Yeah, I
per foot?
felt that from your side.
I don't know why we would have reported that,
It was on
because
the.
that's the spot. There's no place to fill that in.
Right, but on the order, there is a spot, and I have to fill it
Yeah,
in,
I
so
can get it
that's an easy
separately,
thing
but
for
I
you to
don't-
get to me after.
Yeah,
Okay,
There's no
I
bucket.
don't remember calculating it, but I can
Yeah,
find it.
okay.
Yeah.
So, Jean, if you would just make that note, please, that she's gonna get us square feet.
I mean, I have the
Just keep,
kind of replacement area in total. So
It's
not
just-
just the compensatory.
that's what you're working on.
What it asks for is,
yeah,
yeah, so proposed replacement is 27,100. Is that the number you're looking for? You have to report the impact and then the proposed replacement. So the replacement is 27,100.
okay, I'll have to look, if I need to clarify that later, I can email you. And all the compensation is in bog 12.
Yes.
Okay. And you did a separate hydrology analysis for base flood elevation, the 100-year floodplain for the property? Do you remember what the 100-year floodplain is? I've got 77, but I think it changes throughout, so,
It does, it ranges.
Okay.
Pull that out as well. I can't remember what letter that was in, because that
Okay.
was one of our much earlier submissions.
It's the general, I reviewed the calcs.
Mhm.
100-year flood elevation varied between 72 and 77.
72 to 77.
Yeah.
Okay,
And that was slightly different than the older calculations.
okay.
I have it as 73 to 77, the 100-year flood.
73 to 77. Okay. 77. And did you have the 10-year floodplain elevation?
The 10-year varies between 71 and 75.
75, okay. All right, now I'm back down to riverfront. So inner and outer riparian amounts?
Sure. Yeah, they're correct.
So the inner riparian is 6,100 square feet.
6,100?
Yeah, outer is
3,400. Okay.
Total 95.
Okay, and then the permanent for the piers was 64 square feet and utility poles?
We rounded to 100.
Okay. And did we have a number for the degraded area? So that definition in riverfront is impervious surfaces from existing structures or pavement, absence of topsoil, junkyards, or abandoned dumping grounds.
Yeah, so we did not update it for the reduced alternative because we did not file as a redevelopment project. In the full build, it was a 7,000 square foot, if I'm remembering correctly. It would be reduced from that because, you know, we had underground electric through these dike roads, which would have been
Okay.
reduced. So I can get you an update.
Okay,
number
so,
for that if you'd like.
so no longer redevelopment.
Well, I think we had never necessarily filed as
I'm sorry.
redevelopment, but we're noting to the commission that
Degraded.
significant portions of it would qualify as redevelopment. They were previously degraded and they'd be returned to their existing state.
Okay, I'm just making sure we're,
Would they be returned to their existing state? Yes. Yeah, because it's just underground trenching and dike roads is the main impact of it developed previously degraded urban area.
okay, I'm just confirming you're not counting the bogs as,
No, no.
Okay.
And actually, we were quite conservative with the redevelopment number that we had provided
Yep.
because we only used what we call the, 12-ish foot wide traveled way. But
Okay.
certainly, there's other area on the shoulders that's not vegetated as well, but we just use that main traveled way.
okay, so those are the resource areas and the quantities that we're looking at. Do you want to do the ag portion now, or do we have anything else we need to?
No, I think we can jump into that.
Okay.
And then, so Ian, who's a NRCS certified farm planner, also reviewed the plans in terms of farming, ongoing farming viability, and pleased to report on that.
So, I think you got this letter today, so. based
Why
on our
don't you
site-
just clarify, identify yourself since it's a different voice now.
Sure. Ian Ward, New England Consulting Services. Farm planner is verified with NRCS, and I reviewed the property, looked at best management practices that we employ, identified a few concerns that I had, primarily with reduced coefficient uniformity of the sprinkler heads. So suggested that as part of the project, that the sprinkler heads themselves be replaced using the NRCS approved pop-up irrigation heads, they're Hunter I-20s. They can have lower projectile, lower height nozzles that you put in them so that they wouldn't come in contact with panels. Aside from that, from a fertilizer perspective, typically fertilizers flown on helicopters. These panels would preclude that. The owner already has a tractor with a rotary spinner, already using that, so that can be put in place for fertilizer. Integrated pest management, flooding, irrigating, all can happen as it has historically. The bogs are traditionally dry harvested. From a conservative perspective, as 20 years is a long time. So from a conservative perspective, I looked at the dikes, the widths, the takeoff areas for water harvesting, and that there are substantial enough areas through which water harvesting can take place, even with the panels being there. The heights of the machines, the operation of the person, whether perpendicular or parallel to the rows, it's a little bit of a, depending upon which machine is used, to go perpendicular to the panels. Someone may have to duck depending on how tall they are. But from that perspective, in this case, the operator doesn't intend a water pick. Last year was an anomaly, with it being so wet we couldn't dry pick. But traditionally, the past 10 years before that, it was dry harvested. Dry harvesting does involve helicopter, if you do it that way. I personally don't use a helicopter. I'm here to say that it's completely viable to not have a helicopter. Use buggies or drag the berries to the side, load them on a trailer, on the dike, off of the bog itself. So that was, in essence, the summary. Are there any questions on the agricultural parts?
Well, I guess the summary is you're saying that there will be no difficulty continuing the agricultural activity with the panels in place.
Correct. There's, as with any change, there's nuances. There's change of habits. There's change of time, of not necessarily timing, but of some certain practices. But the primary cultural practices will still be able to be implemented. The crop will be able to be grown. The harvest will be able to take place, so that the vine health will be able to be maintained.
And we briefly talked about your reporting requirements later on, not just for the dual
Yeah.
solar project. So maybe refresh our memories, because that's been a while, and I'm not sure if you have something you're suggesting to include for monitoring, or what you'd submit to us.
I think the SMART program dual use requirements stipulate that we need to report to the Department of Energy and the Department of Agriculture every year in terms of essentially what happened over the previous year with the ongoing farming activities, as well as the yield, how well the crop produced. And then we also said we would voluntarily submit documentation that we're maintaining bogs as organic. And I think one important thing to note as well is that with the bogs being upland, with the panels now being restricted to just the upland areas, we are planning to do the dual use project, but it's not a necessary thing under the program or under the DEP guidance for us to do that on the upland logs, since they're non-jurisdictional. So our plan is to do the dual use, but that's another aspect of the conversation that's essentially taken off the table by just placing it on upland logs. But that said, I'd be happy to volunteer those additional reporting requirements for the project.
Okay, and just for the description of the project in the order, it is still dual use?
Yes.
Okay. And what's the acreage now of the 4 bogs? Do you know?
It's 20, just under 26 acres.
And the output of the solar?
3.9 megawatts DC, 2 megawatts AC.
See, would you say 2 megawatts?
Yeah, AC is the same.
AC.
The DC capacity has been reduced.
Okay. Your landscape sheet, page 5.1. Just your heading is all blurry. It looks like it got printed twice. Right there. Yeah. Okay. So is that a page you'll just sort of, you can reprint so it's clear and we can put in the packet?
Yeah, we can reprint that, and I believe Mr. Garner had a question on one of the dimensions that we'll check.
Okay.
And we can include it in, there was a request for an instruction set to be submitted to the commission.
Okay. Okay. So the revision, just 2 separate sheets, not, you don't have to run the whole plan set. We'll just take there's way too much paper waste. So I just have a couple more things. When we did the site inspection, we looked at the violation area and the culvert and the wetland, the sedimentation and the erosion into the wetland. Have you come to any sort of decision on what will happen there?
Ultimately, as I said, we own the land, we lease it to the solar company, but I think we're going to end up taking care of it. That will be our responsibility, and I think we'll take care of that, obviously, regardless of this, but if you'd like to also include that as a stipulation in here, since that is part of the project area, we'd be happy to do that.
Okay. And the last thing is, I don't know if it's really necessary anymore, but we should probably just define impair, impact, and destroy, just in case when I write something, I need to know we have it in the record or not.
Do you mean define the term or define the?
Right, because it's not defined in Wetland Protection Act, so if we need to have those definitions, then we should do that now at the public hearing, because once we close the public hearing, we can't take any new information. And if for some reason we start writing or drafting the order of condition and we need to have that definition somewhere, it's better just to have it done at the public hearing. So, Dan?
My question was just, where are these terms? If we could just review where these terms are used, because I did notice this term destroy.
Well, they're all used in the regs, but they're not defined in the regs. So, your default could be the dictionary, where you come up with a definition now on your own.
Yeah, I think maybe we could just take a minute to write it down, or would that be okay?
Sure.
Okay.
If you want to think about that, or...
Well, I mean, these words have meanings in everyday life, and are you saying, I'll have my own interpretation. Impair means partially damage and interfere with a given resource or activity. Impact means, to me, potentially have an effect that does not materially change either the resource or the activity. And destroy, it has, to me, self-evident that what was there is no longer there and is not likely to come back on its own. So, would anyone else consider that to have a different approach, or not?
I have an alternative plan, which might just make things a little more confusing, but just something that's done in the academic world is just citing the Oxford English Dictionary, OED, and it will give definitions by number of letters. So
the hesitation when you bring up something like the OED is it tends to give you 1,000 years of information, and in terms of derivations and so on. And
that's true.
But we're not.
But
here
the definition itself, you don't. I agree that you don't need the usage in this instance, but for the definition itself, that is the standard. OED is the standard for such definitions, and you could just say OED 1A, OED 2B, whatever.
The problem with the dictionary definition of impact would be to hit something with force. And last time we looked.
I would agree. I would agree. And I think we're all used to words having multiple meanings depending on context.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
you're exactly right. So that's why I say I'm looking at these words and saying in the context of what we're talking about, to me, they're not ambiguous, and that's why, and I'm kind of wondering, well,
Okay.
if they're not defined in the regs, the people who framed the regs might have had the same sense that this is not too fuzzy. And so I personally don't feel we need to, other than, this conversation, get too microscopic about this.
Okay, so you proposed some definitions. Is everybody okay with those definitions, and that's what you're considering, those words? I'm seeing some nods, yeah. Are you good? Okay, all right, thank you. I think I got everything on my list. So, I don't know, commission members, and then, Pat, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, yeah, I guess I should talk about my conversation with DEP.
First, just for clarity of the audience, we want to specify your role in this process.
I'm Patrick Arner, Senior Wetland Scientist. I was hired as a peer reviewer on the project. This is my second appearance before you. So I received last week, in part of the packet from Stacy, the Hansen decision that we were talking about tonight. And I read it, and I did not read what their interpretation was. Jen and I talked about this, and I told her that I tried to contact DEP directly and try and understand whether the interpretation was based on a policy or a regulation that was very clear. So after about a day, I did reach David Johnson. I spoke to him Friday of last week. And David basically said that the Hansen decision was not a slam dunk, they were not analogous, but it was the best that they had. And so I tried to pin him down on what they based the decision on. Was it based on actual regulations and I was not familiar with, or was it based on a written policy of some kind that DEP was using? And he said it was just the Southeast region's policy. That this issue of whether the logs that have been built in the upland area were jurisdictional or not had never gone to adjudicatory. It was simply, they were basing everything on the Hansen decision. So I guess my opinion would be that if this decision would have, whichever way it goes in terms of being approved or disapproved by the commission, if it's appealed to Cerro in Lakeville, the chances are pretty good, presuming the application is complete, that they'll affirm that these are upland logs, and that upland logs are no jurisdiction. But I think my professional opinion is also that if it then got appealed to adjudicatory, it would be a whole new ballgame. And I think that there's very little difference between a bog that's created out of an upland that has a hydrologic connection to a wetland, and a replication area that's created out of an upland that has a hydrologic connection. We talked about that on the phone as well. Dave Johnston and I spoke about that. And he said their opinion was the difference was that logs are farmed. And the fact that the farm takes them out of being wetlands and turns them into an agricultural entity. And that, again, Cerro's opinion is that those are not jurisdictional. So I asked him about the few bogs that are out in the western region, and he said he didn't have a clue what they were. So all of the discussion we've had in terms of impacts and whether there's BBW or bank and what the amounts are and all of the things that we've been talking about for the last hour are premised on these, in fact, not being jurisdictional. And I think, it's neither here nor there, and I can't, this is your decision in terms of where to go with it. But I think it's important that you understand that DEP's not, this is not a statewide decision that DEP has made. It's not under, the core of it is not under lane the regulation. It's simply the Southeast region's position.
But we're in the southeast region. is that
You are.
correct? Okay.
That-
So, you know, as I said before, we are not in a position of creating new legislation. We have to use some guidance, and if that's our only guidance, and, you know, it might require a remedy at the legislature level, but right now, as representatives of the town, and of this law.
Or the adjudicatory decision.
Right, but that's kind of out of our, from my perspective, I can't be concerned about that. I can only be concerned what we have on the table and go from there.
No, I agree. I'm just passing along the conversation.
Yeah, no, I understand. Do we have other comments from members of the commission? And we can now open it up to members of the audience, but as I'm sure you realize, this is really restricted to the Wetlands Protection Act, so we can't field all concerns about every aspect of this project. So when you have, if you have a question, please identify yourself and preferably your address as well. So go ahead.
Kelly Gallagher, 201 Baker. So just wanted some clarification. Did you say that soil tests were done from the upland bogs?
Can somebody address that?
Yes, sure. No, soil tests were not undertaken within our bonds.
Okay.
By us, at least.
Right.
So there's been no soil testing?
It's my understanding you relied on historical data, is that correct?
Correct.
And identified it as the gravels of Windsor soils, is that? So yes, there is historical data about what exists in that area in terms of being sand and gravel.
And I'm sorry, what was the date of that?
Say again?
What was the year of that historical date?
We don't have that.
So there's a
With the date of the soil survey, the Bristol County Soil Survey? Because that's what was telling you the type of soil.
Well, that, and then I would, reiterate, we also looked at the aerial
Yep.
mapping and historic USGS
Yep.
mapping, so beginning in present day, going back for as far as that's available. Let's see.
But I have a feeling you might be asking more about the geotechnical data. Okay.
I'm just concerned if we're going this upland bog question, they're going off of Hanson. But it's not like Ms. Carlino said, apples to apples. So without soil testing and the geotechnical data, the groundwater elevation levels, how are they determining that?
Yeah. So we're sort of looking at two different things. So the soil information that they're bringing up, that was just to try to figure out if it was upland before the bogs were created. The geotechnical data is something that the commission had asked for, but we have not received yet. The applicant has said you're going to provide that later. The commission has said we really want that information now. So that's where we leave that.
And then will there still be a battery? Still be a battery?
You're referring to the output of the.
If it's a 3.9 megawatt DC,
yes, there'll still be a energy storage.
Maybe
What
just point out
megawatt?
the location for her.
Same location as before.
and is the battery the same size as it was?
Yes, the battery's the same size.
So why would you need a same size battery for half the size project?
That allows us to store the power for a longer period of time. And by doing that, we can better optimize the output from the batteries during given times of day. It's one of the things that actually allows this reduced size project to still be financially viable.
And what's to stop you from expanding in the future?
You have to come back for another permit?
So there's the potential if they get their foot in the door, they could come back for another permit.
Correct. Oh, that's true of anybody
the plan.
doing a project.
And then where are the location of the inverters?
Safe spot.
And then Ian mentioned regarding the agricultural position, that we talked about the cranberry crops. They can be grown the same as with these panels on top. But I think it's important to remind everyone that this has never been done before in the country. Solar panels killed the cranberries in Carver. The vines came back after years, but the amount of bloom was dramatically reduced. And they're not harvesting cranberries in Carver. They're growing seeds for propagation, basically, is what they're doing. And we also submitted a letter from a technician at the UMass Cranberry Station who said that this would actually dramatically reduce the cranberry crop. And this science experiment should be done on 1 acre parcel for 5 years before it's allowed, something like this. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And none of our other concerns have been alleviated with this reduced size. Possible water contamination, effects on the wildlife, home values, fire, noise, structure of our private wells, etc.
Any further questions? Please identify yourself.
Is it Ken Knopf from Five Fuller Drive? Is it customary with new business partners of the town to start off a meeting that they're going to threaten to sue the town? Is that customary? Since you guys, everyone here?
Is this within the context of the Wetland Protection Act? I mean, obviously it's a loaded question, I'm not really
I'm just
sure.
asking. My second question.
Of course it's not customary
I'm just
for
asking.
people. But
I feel insulted, that's all.
Well, we were coerced. We were told that we either go along with this plan and give our support tonight, or that he would sue and put the full project through.
Well, this is something I don't know if anybody can comment on. I've heard nothing about this.
I would like to hear from Nexon why they're trying to coerce us this way.
I can be a little more detailed about what we're told. Adam contacted Chuck Gallagher, 201 Bay Road. Adam contacted one of the people that are in our group and had a conversation with him a week ago and explained to him about what they were intending on doing tonight with this meeting. Not fully in detail, but a lot of it. He also added to that conversation that he wanted the full support of all the people on Bay Road. He wanted a spokesman from the group to come here, showing you that we were supporting them, and that if we didn't do this, he was going to be going to court immediately to file for the original project that they had saying. Which I think it's important that you know that.
All right, but you know, this sounds out of the context of what we have to decide about, and you can.
I don't think it's funny, sir.
You lies to my face multiple
Maybe you should leave. That's how you think this is funny.
It's not funny.
You know, we're getting a little out of context.
The whole thing is out of
He's still
context.
laughing at us. He called us lies, he's laughing at us now. We're serious about this.
We're trying to maintain a hearing within the context of what we need to do with hearing the concerns under the Wetland Protection Act.
I understand that, and I apologize, but this is very emotional for us. This is our kids, our house values. People, there's already 5 houses for sale on Bay Road now because of these people. I mean, this is pretty big for us. So I apologize for the emotion, but when somebody calls up one of our people in the group and does that, we get angry. And something should be addressed. As he almost tried to do to you folks earlier tonight.
But this is not the place where anyone can address it.
I don't know where to go. Where do you go?
Everybody
Ethics
should be
Commission,
made
the
aware
Ethics
of the
Commission?
situation, though.
Can't talk to the town manager, he's not gonna help us.
He got
I mean,
us into this
seriously.
mess.
We don't know who to go to. So the other people that deal with them tonight, so we're trying to let you know what they tried to do to us before this meeting.
And I've been lied to directly to my face by him.
And I apologize for
directly
being upset.
multiple times.
Well, we have to move on to things that are relevant to the Wetlands Protection Act.
Ken Knopf again, quick question here. Under the Smart Incentive Plan, which is part of this whole project, I always thought you have to own the land, not lease the land. And you have to be a farmer. They're not farmers.
But with regard to us reviewing a project, we need to have only the signature of the owner, and then we deal with the applicant. Often the owner is the applicant. It doesn't have to be under the Wetlands Protection Act.
It doesn't have to be.
It
But under
doesn't.
the Smart Incentive Plan, how does that
I'm
work?
afraid I'm not, I don't know the details of that program.
Shouldn't the owner of
Well,
the
even
land
if
be
the
here?
commission, even if the SMART program requires the owner be the applicant or the farmer.
So the actual
The
farm-
wetland permit doesn't supersede that, right? So, and the SMART program doesn't supersede the wetland permit. So they have to comply with both of them.
They don't even own the land. Wadley owns the land, shouldn't he be here?
Well, I mean,
representing?
it's not uncommon. So the Wetland Protection Act, we review the project that's brought before us. And a lot of times, it's an applicant who hasn't purchased the property yet. That's not uncommon.
Okay.
Yeah. But they'd have to comply with both. They'd have to comply with all the requirements of all the programs involved. One doesn't, just because they got a wetland permit doesn't mean that they can do something in the SMART program they wouldn't have been able to do before.
All right,
They have
so
to comply with
the
everything.
gentleman in the green is next.
So I'm John Willard from 561 Bay Road. I'm just a little bit confused by, like, the town of Easton, which is your neighbor, being myself, they consider that wetlands. I can't put a pool in my backyard because it's wetlands. And Easton is extremely strong on that. So there's no confusion, there's no ifs. So I don't know how there can be now with it. And the second thing is, so I'm an electrical engineer. We design a lot of projects. I do not do a lot of projects on seems like, looks like, might be, because stuff blows up if you do that in the electrical world. So it seems kind of weird that with all the engineering we have in this world, that it seems like and looks like. Doesn't make sense.
But what specifically are you referring to?
Whether they're
when you
upland
just-
or not.
Well, no, we've determined that well, you're raising a different issue. You're raising an issue with a law that was passed in 1964, has gone through several revisions, and every detail in every law is not addressed. And I'm sure you've come up against some things in the world of electrical engineering where not every code system has addressed every aspect of electrical technology. And that's kind of where we are now. The world is always changing. We don't know if DEP is going to come out with new regulations in the future to address what has been ambiguities discussed here tonight.
Right, in the way in the electrical, mechanical, and the other engineering worlds, I'm not structural and I'm not civil, but they try and have committees to look at this stuff and study this stuff before they change those codes so stuff doesn't blow up.
All right.
You know, and stuff still does blow up in the
But
real
those
world.
committees occur at
Yes,
state
sir.
level.
Right.
And they don't occur in the town level.
Right, I just was seeing what I was hearing from engineers, which
All right,
us
but if there's a
engineers usually do
specific-
not use those types of terms of,
Okay.
that seems like might work, I don't know.
If there is a specific question about what was discussed tonight, I'd like to hear it, otherwise we should move on.
Okay,
I'm just going to mention, Easton has a very comprehensive wetland bylaw, so
Yes.
they may look at wetlands a little differently than we do under the state law.
Right. And just one last thing that came to me was, they were saying that just another conflict, I live right on the bogs, we go out and watch them harvest, we see the helicopters, we see them fertilize, and they're saying they dry harvest for the last 10 years. They typically flood the bogs and pick them all up on one side, so I don't know if that's considered dry harvesting, because I'm not a cranberry guy, but it seems to me like that's wet. They might have dry harvested the year before last, being organic, but it's just another thing that they're telling you that, I live on the bogs, we watch them do it, it used to be a great thing, the helicopter comes by my house, the whole house shakes. The first time it happened, I was ready to jump out the window. And it's just another thing that's being told to you, that living there, that's not, at least from, unless I'm misinterpreting what's wet and what's dry, that's not a correct statement.
Do you want to directly respond to that?
Yeah, I would just say, what we said was the Stevens bogs, which are these upland bogs, are dry harvested, and generally the bogs it's a combination of wet and dry. These bogs here have been dry harvested for the last 10 years with the exception of this past year because it was so wet. So I think the gentleman who lives in Easton is used to seeing these bogs here be wet
We
harvested.
see all of them, I run it.
Whereas
So we have
I'm gonna just go to Ian for a minute. Your letter about the Cranberry Bog operation, you talked about dry harvesting. Did you also address if they had to do a wet harvest?
Yes.
Okay, and so how would they do a wet harvest if the solar panels are approved?
So the same way that they do a wet harvest now, using the beaters. There's also, he doesn't.
Explain what the beavers are, nobody knows what that is.
So a traditional harvester, if you haven't seen it, is 3 or 4 wheel vehicle with a beater in the front of it. And that, because the cranberries are hollow, they float to the surface. So that's one way to harvest. Where people are going to is pull behind, Harrow, Gates Harrow kind of pickers. There's not a lightweight tractor. That's how Wisconsin picks. That's more and more where Massachusetts is going. But what is presently owned are the water pickers. So when we looked at with a wheel, looked at the flooding mechanisms would be the same. The staging area to corral the fruits, to load the fruits, that was specifically what I was concerned about, was making sure that there was enough room for a pump truck to be set up next to a tractor trailer truck or some other vehicle, using the traditional staging areas that they use.
Okay.
So this woman in the back.
Meredith Falconer, 11 Fuller Drive. I guess what I'm just trying to get clarification on, which is a specific question, and it does come up with these questions. Mine is a specific question. Are we sure that the bogs that they're proposing solar panels on are not wetlands?
No. We've been presented with that information.
That they presented?
Correct.
Okay.
The commission will review the file and deliberate on whether they agree with that.
All right, and please identify yourself.
Yes, Janine Simmons, 15 Massasoit Avenue. Now, I don't live anywhere near the eastern side. I live all the way down near the other side. And I can tell you that as recently as 2012, they were all wet harvested. And I know it's not a question or whatever, but it is pertinent information. I actually have a picture with the detailed information that says 2012 on it. And I do know that some of them may not have been harvested all the time that way, only because they did not harvest all of them. He intended to rotate some and did not harvest all of them every year, from what I have seen. Okay, so I just want to make that clear, just so that I know there was a little back and forth.
With regard to the issues that are before the commission,
I understand that.
How they are harvested is not.
I understand that. I'm just
The issue is
establishing
the jurisdiction of-
misinformation that we get.
Okay.
Now, I do have a question. I have several questions. My first question is, you mentioned that there was not going to be as much trenching and utility poles at either side of the Mulberry Brook Bridge. Which bridge are we talking about? Is this the one at the very end of the bog?
Sort of in the middle.
So it's the one in the middle, okay. Another question before I actually address my concerns about that. Another question is, more than once I have asked at these meetings about the environment, about the ecosystem, about the animals, a lot about the birds. I still haven't heard if we have bothered to do a species study. Since they have gone organic, there have been a lot more animals, including birds, which my concern is putting more overhead wires, especially if they're on either side and they're crossing like this. You get a lot of egrets, you get a lot of heron and a couple other birds. Osprey I've seen down there and flying over my house, which is near there. And I'm very concerned about them coming in to those panels because they look like water and getting caught up in those lines. That's one of my concerns. Another concern is that we still have that bog number 18, I believe it is, down at the bottom, which now, are you still doing trenching for that? Which again impacts a lot of reptiles and whatnot, which again, I have not heard anything about species studies. Let me see, I did have something else. Oh, and you talked about that, like with the Hanson thing, that we can, only go on what's presented to us. Well, is it not true that our peer review is there for guidance? And our peer review says he is not comfortable with this? If that's, I'm just paraphrasing you, but basically, that's the whole reason why we hire a peer review. So if we're going to go with something that's presented to us and not listen to our peer review on the same matter, then why are we spending money as a town?
Let me clarify. As I said before, we are not in a position of creating new legislation.
I understand, I'm not asking you.
Just as our peer review is not in that
I'm just
position.
saying, shouldn't we take his information as guidance? You're taking the Hanson as guidance, and his information is just as important, that is why he's hired. So, again, now with this new plan, and I know, and it's with all respect to the commission and to Nexon, they've now submitted a new modified plan. There are a lot of questions that I heard here tonight, and I really do not think, with all due respect, that it's something that the commission can immediately vote on tonight without reviewing it all. And it's no disrespect to anyone, but again, like I said, we have guidance from peer review, we have new information, we still haven't done anything about the species, which is a big part of this. This is connected to the Canoe River. So I still have many concerns about the ecosystem of our town, especially with flooding. Oh, and I'm sorry, one more thing. Where you're putting those telephone poles, there's not a lot to protect them. We get a lot of wind in the area. How accessible is that? And have you talked to the fire department about if those go down, who's going to come in and how quickly? Will they, come to repair them? Only because I don't know how that will affect, if it goes through, how it will affect everyone else's electricity in the area who's connected to it. I know that's not a wetland thing, but it will be in the wetlands if they go down and they can electrocute animals, they can catch something on fire.
Wouldn't that be true for all of the electrical system all over town?
Absolutely, but we have main roads for them to go on. I'm just asking how they're going to address it in reference to when it goes down, who does it get reported to, who's in charge so that, and is there enough access so that there is no adverse effect on the environment that is down there.
Well, I think you're requesting a degree of predictability of the future that no one can really.
Everything's unpredictable. There should be a contingency plan on it, should there not?
You had a question, sir.
No, just to add to that, there are no fire hydrants on Fuller Drive.
Crushed off in the board?
To add on to Jean's.
Well, what would you like to say more, Matt?
No, I just would like to make sure that all you could have done is just said, we will check into that.
We don't have the answer to it.
I know, I'm not asking for an answer, I think I would like to feel that.
For one of them, right, so we can,
just look into it to make sure that there is something, if that were to go through.
right, so the peer review comments, we'll certainly take those, the commission will certainly take those into consideration, right? So when they close a public hearing, they'll review all the information and they'll deliberate at that time.
Excellent.
So that means they'll certainly take all the information that's been submitted by everybody under the sun.
Right.
For this project.
It was said that.
Yeah, they haven't made a decision on whether they agree with the uplands right now. They're taking all the information and it's there, the way it works is the applicant has the burden of proof. They've got to provide all the information to the commission. And then the commission sits down and they review it and they say whether it's reasonable, whether it meets the regulations or not. So they'll have to go through all of it and deliberate on that. So that, they will consider that. Back to Ian for a second, because you talked about the wet bogs and whether or not the machinery they have can fit under the solar project for a wet bog harvest.
Actually, Jen, I have a question of you, but I guess I can wait until after.
do that, and because we have one more thing to answer for her.
So,
Yeah.
so yes, the existing equipment will work to water harvest.
I know, well, that wasn't I just
Okay.
wanted to state that there was misinformation, that's all.
Okay. The wildlife, under Wetland Protection Act, if people propose to alter a certain amount in each different type of wetland area. So if there's 5,000 square feet or 10% of the total floodplain area, then a wildlife habitat evaluation is required. So each, except for wetlands, each of those resource areas has a set amount where it triggers a wildlife habitat evaluation. With the reduction of what they're doing, and even the larger plan, they didn't trip any of those thresholds. So there's no wildlife habitat evaluation that's required. So you certainly take a look at it, but it's not an evaluation that we can require because it's under the thresholds. So it's presumed that it's okay if it's below a certain threshold. So they legally can't ask for that, for the information to go to.
All right, and Dan.
They get all. I
Pretty
think
much.
we got pretty close.
Pretty much, thank
Okay.
you very much.
Dan, I have a question.
No,
Dan.
I was just going to ask Jen to clarify the wildlife question.
Are we okay with that then?
Oh, yes.
No, of course, we'd
Yeah.
like more,
All
but
right,
we
and
can't
then
require
there's
it.
a question way in the back here.
Yeah, got a question. Well, just to jump on the wildlife.
Please
Horseback-
identify
Oh, I'm
yourself.
sorry, Mike Wagner, 211 Bay Road.
All right.
There is horseback riding all the time in the back, and I've seen it, in this dotted trails and eastern line. Those inverters are awfully close. I don't know if that ever been brought up. Because I walk them, I go back there quite a bit. And to follow up on the inverters, why is it so far away? Are you leasing all that land out that way too? Because that takes a lot to run wires, cables underground, however you're doing with poles. Why are those inverters real close to the panels itself?
Would you like me to respond? So we'll have an easement, all the necessary easements we need to put them up there. And if you recall, we relocated the inverters there.
No, I do, but that was the old plan, not the new plan.
So that's as far away from any residence as they can possibly be.
But the question I just asked, are you leasing all that land too, where those inverters
We'll
are?
have easements. So a lot of times you lease the area where the project is and you have all the necessary easements for your underground wires and access roads, much like the electric utility does.
My fear is expansions down the line.
Yep.
Until you price the whole property.
Please identify yourself.
Georgine Arventitas, 207 Bay Road. Can you just clarify, you said that there was extra battery storage, so that makes this project more feasible, where at the beginning when you first applied for this, you said no further setbacks, this can't be minimized, nothing can happen, or it's not going to be feasible. What makes this change feasible?
So the reason this reduced size project is feasible is largely in part to the landowner agreeing to lease us a smaller portion, much smaller portion of the area than having us buy the entire site.
All right, and there was one further question. Go ahead, sir.
This is a well-protected zone. I haven't seen anything that's showing us that our well is going to be protected with this project because no testing is being done that we've asked for, no studies have been done that we've asked
All
for.
right, when you define a well protection, you're talking about the town well area?
We're on wells.
We're all on private mutual well.
Well, town water.
Drinking water.
Drinking water.
Okay.
The Johnsons has.
So what type of testing
What's
or
been done to protect
studies
us?
will be done first before any of this would even think of that being happening?
Isn't this really more a Board of Health issue?
I reached out to the Board of Health, they've ignored my emails.
They don't reach out.
And why would this be different from building a house on anywhere over there?
Because it doesn't have 12,000 solar panels. in a
And
house.
piles being driven into the ground, thousands.
They're gonna disrupt the land. And water goes underneath and it could affect all our wells. And then we're all in trouble.
Yeah, my
Thousands of
neighbor
packets
actually
were
had.
pounded into the wall, into the ground.
had somebody come out a while
And
after.
this whole,
said-
throughout this
Well,
whole
the answer
process,
to
we
your
asked-
question is there are no studies.
So nothing's being done to protect the well waters, is what that's how that answers.
Well, I think, I know there's a tremendous amount of alarm being raised by all of you here tonight, but, you know, we put these panels on roofs all the time.
Different type of
But no
panels.
one,
Totally different type of panels.
totally different? Why are they
Totally.
totally?
Larger
Is it driving
Quite-
piles?
quite
They're
different.
not going on a
into the
roof,
ground.
they're going 15 feet under.
And they don't have motors that go all
Yeah,
constant.
but they're still above ground, they're not in the ground, they're.
They are in the
They're in the ground.
ground.
Exactly.
The answer, you got the answer,
Floating.
that there are no tests being done.
There's nothing being done to protect the well water, is all I want to.
And you need to define if you
Is
feel there.
anything being done to
If
protect the well
you
water?
need to define, if you feel there's a threat, bring it to the Board of Health, they can act on it.
And when they do.
Really?
So the
Yeah.
geotechnical data that you're going to submit,
Board of Health is.
what's your time frame for that?
We typically do our geotechnical work after receiving all of our discretionary permits and prior to submitting our construction plans. So largely depends on the timing of our permitting. As soon as that's in place, we do our geotech.
So you'll get your geotechnical information. The commission would require a copy of that
Yeah.
in the conditions,
Yeah.
if it's approved.
Yeah.
We would also require a peer review of that.
Okay.
I'm not sure where else to go with that just yet.
We did provide a response, I mean,
In terms of information.
yeah.
Yeah, so, in response to the comment, I think perhaps in one of the first response letters that were supplemental information letters, we provided those a discussion of the geotech, explaining, you know, when it's typically undertaken, and that I think we included language for a suggested condition if the commission was amenable. I know there was concern about whether there was a confining layer that would affect, well, quantity, but so a condition to provide that information to the commission, and if there is a confining layer, to not penetrate it.
I'm not sure that it's adequate to just provide that to the commission and to have the commission review it with a peer reviewer. It may also need to come back for the commission with notification to abutters, so everyone can review that information, since we don't have that now, right? So that's it's missing information that had been requested. So the commission has the option to deny for lack of information, or they can condition receiving the information and, you know, the what-ifs if it shows it's not going to work properly. So that's something the commission would have to deliberate on, which way they want to go on that.
So the geotechnical, that will include, will that have anything to do with this, will that take care of the drinking water questions? Or, isn't drinking water one of our 8?
Yes.
Groundwater
Groundwater
protection. So, I'm not comfortable with just leaving it to the Board of Health. We have to figure out how much we are
So we just had
responsible.
a gentleman saying in his world of electrical engineering, things are precise and measurable. And yet we are being presented with a fear that something is gonna happen in the future to groundwater. But I don't sense any precision as to what the exact threat is.
Driving galvanized.
If I can
posts
say,
into the
sir,
ground.
then you didn't read the letters that I sent you. Because that information is in there. And this project has never been done before in the country. So how can you say it's a fear or something when I provided you accurate information from peer-reviewed studies about it? And how can you say it won't happen when this has never been proven safe in the country?
And most of the projects are not in wetlands, so geotechnical review is done after the fact because it's not in a wetland, but this is all new, being in a wetland and a bog. So what happens with the galvanized posts that are driven into the ground and the cranberry bogs are all around it, and galvanized posts can have lead in them, can have different types of chemicals in them, that's how they galvanize them.
And acidic.
And
They galvanize
if
them.
they come up and go into the cranberries,
They
and now you're
galvanize
selling
them.
cranberries.
Let's be
you don't-
precise, let's be precise. They galvanize them with zinc, and it covers iron.
And where?
They don't galvanize with lead.
No, but it,
There's lead in the zinc.
read the documents say that there can be lead in the coatings of galvanized steel. That's precise, it's in the letters that Kelly provided to you. It says she presented to you from engineers who, that's what they do.
Julian.
So, and we don't know, right, but is it gonna come off, it's definitely gonna affect the cranberries that are right next to it at a minimum. So now and then you're selling them, and kids are eating them. So we don't know. That's all we're saying, is you don't precisely know.
You have a
Have any
comment?
experience with geotechnical
You know,
data?
respectfully, we have to do something on this. Even if we say, you know, we have to consider this drinking water thing. Even if there is no threat, it's better that we say, you know, well, let's look at it this way. Julie, do you want to put a sentence in there that says there is no threat and have it in our documentation? I mean, maybe I don't know about drinking water, but
Julie, we just talked about a state improvement project on 123. Why was there no concern about threat to groundwater was that?
well, there was. I mean, they were.
Is it well water? Yeah, well,
That's all
There
private wells?
was concern, that's why we had the presentation. They're putting in new pipes. There was discussion of, you know, we have,
All right.
there was discussion of the outflow from the pipes. Was the outflow going to affect the wetlands? It would be unfortunate if you had a mixture of old material and whatever else flowing into the wetlands.
All right, we've spent a lot of time on this discussion tonight. I don't hear clarity.
Well, can
So
we-
if there's more different topics, fine. If you want to keep talking about the same material, fine.
I have two more things to say, and then I'll shut up. One is, can we suggest to Jen to liaise with the Board of Health or to consider this water thing further? And,
Well, let's be hypothetical. What's the clear-cut information that would resolve this?
I agree, that's what we need
Well,
to do. We have to find a-
we are being thrown a conundrum with the idea that you can't solve this, fine, you can't act on it. And I don't agree with that approach.
So you gotta risk our lives.
We've said this whole time, we're not against this, but we want the testing done to make sure it's safe. That's all we want, is for it
Well,
to be
what
safe.
test would you do?
Well, maybe we should figure that out since it's a guinea pig project. I'm just a foot
Well,
soldier, I'm not
when
the
you
guy in
talk
charge of
about,
this.
we're raising concerns about galvanized things. Every conduit, not conduit, what's the, under the roadway term that I'm thinking. Culvert, every culvert is galvanized.
Every
You're
caution
not
should be
driving that
taken.
into someone's drinking water.
Every caution should be taken.
They're gonna make
before this
Swiss
type of-
cheese underneath that cranberry bog.
Before this power
Salt
plant is
gears.
made, that's what we're saying, every precaution should be done before a power plant like this is put together, and we haven't gotten one bit of cooperation as far as any studies being done on it. A brand-new guinea pig project, first in the country, nothing. Not one person's been willing to say, let's do a study on this. Why? Because they gotta get their foot in the door to get that big dollar. That's what the bottom line is.
Pat,
That's
do
what
you
it's
have a
all about.
suggestion?
Yeah, so if I may.
Sure.
To the chair. The questions being raised are not unusual, they're not unconventional, they're fairly inexpensive and simple way of dealing with it. What I would suggest is that a condition be developed that requires them to do baseline testing. They wouldn't have to do multiple tests, they could do a test in each one box, so it might be 5 or 6 tests, and they would be testing for pesticides, herbicides, and metals. It's very conventional. My firm does a lot of water quality testing, and that would be done prior to any posts being done. You'd have that as part of the contract filing. Once the project was complete, I don't know exactly what the timing should be, but within 12 months perhaps of it being built, if it gets approval, follow-up testing would be done, and that would determine whether there was any change whatsoever. It would have to be done seasonally at the same time, so that conditions were like kind. There'd have to be some thought that went into how to do that, but I think from my own experience is that these are concerns that are real. If the groundwater is being driven, then the groundwater movement is being driven by an impenetrable surface that's below the winter soils. We heard about that on the DOT project, where they hit that when they wanted to do infiltration. Then, in fact, driving through that with their geotechnical piles, that's the purpose of the geotechnical testing, is to determine how deep they have to go with their piles. And if they break through that into something that's below that, like peat or a whole different type of soil, then that will change the whole dynamics of what that groundwater does. So you'd have that built-in protection, the residents would have the built-in protection of knowing that things had or hadn't changed. And if they did change, then the burden would be on these guys to solve that problem. But at least inexpensively, you would have come up with a solution to sort of build in that protection so that there'd be a way to check. Because without the baseline testing, if the testing was done 5 years from now, you have no way of knowing what was in there prior to the work.
Right, you need the baseline for that. So,
For example, the Reed and
Stacy,
Barton
do you-
site, the
do
Reed
you-
and Barton site has toxic chemicals that have gone into that groundwater, and the houses around there, the people around there have a very high incidence of cancer right now.
All right, that's outside of what we're talking about.
It may be that it's
Um,
related.
So, Stacy, what resources does Beals and Thomas have in-house to come up with a monitoring procedure and the parameters? Or do we need to go to another firm? I don't know what's available at your firm.
The question is what we're testing. So the characteristics you mentioned, herbicides, pesticides, things like that, makes sense to test if you're changing your agricultural methods. So you're applying different pesticides.
No, I was describing the normal water quality testing, but in this case, we'd be looking for metals.
So in this case, we're not, solar panels don't change how fertilizer works. They don't change anything about how plants grow. So there's no point in baseline testing for all kinds of stuff that there's no causal mechanism of putting in a solar panel which lets the same amount of water hit the ground as before it was there. The one thing that might be worth testing would be zinc, because there's a concern about zinc coming out of galvanized pipes. So we'd be happy to do groundwater testing for zinc levels. But that's the only constituent anyone's made any argument is going to be released into the ground. And we know more than anyone else, have no interest in doing broad spectrum testing when we don't need to.
Well, that's why I'm asking if they have someone in-house who can come up with a protocol for us to review.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I don't want reams of paper that I can't interpret either, so I don't have a place to store it. We want it to be
Standard metals program.
useful.
Standard metal test.
And it's, it looks at maybe 10 or 12 different components, including zinc, lead, and different. metals that have been discussed tonight. It's not terribly expensive. It could be put together on a couple of weeks' time.
Okay.
I mean, I have a rental property on the Cape, and I can't even rent the place without a water test every single year.
So
So I think Stacy's going to answer the question first, if we could.
Yes, so to your question. in
Keep
terms of-
going through the chairman, please, so we can keep it orderly. Thanks. So Stacy.
In terms of the question as to whether Beals and Thomas has undertaken protocols for similar testing, yes, we have.
Okay.
In terms of establishing a methodology, never for a solar project or something similar to this, nor for if water quality certification is required or various other projects.
Okay, but you're hearing all of the concerns of the residents, and you can come up with a draft protocol that we can review. Now, is that something you can do in the next 2 weeks? Are you going to continue? Are you going to?
No, I think we would need, I think in order for this reduced size project to work, we don't have that time. So it would need to be something, I think we could agree to a peer-reviewed metals test.
You're gonna be our neighbors.
No, they're not gonna be anywhere near us. They'll be gone.
No, but
you gotta.
the solar farm, you're our neighbors.
Please address
Sorry, it's
questions.
just, that's my drinking water.
One of our neighbors also pointed out that the pound
Identify
unit,
yourself, sir.
Chuck Gallagher, 201 Bay Road.
Yeah.
One of our neighbors, the Johnsons, who directly abut where this would be, was told that the pile driving could also destroy wells in the area. Are they willing to replace all the wells that could possibly be damaged? Excuse me, damaged, if there are any damage from the pounding of the pallets into the ground?
The well explication.
Of the wells, rather?
Yep, we did.
The one-
I think that's outside of wetland protection, but.
Well, it's
Drinking
well,
water.
drinking water.
It's not.
I think you're getting rather
It's outside.
hypothetical.
No, I'm being
That-
real.
It's on
That
real
that
estate.
amount of
It's our
vibration
lives.
is gonna destroy wells.
Excuse me, sir, thanks to piggyback off of that. It's on the DEP website, so if there's any land disturbance near your private wells, then you should re-drill your well due to that, and that's $25,000. So we have a neighbor 50 feet from the sand track roads where they want to be pounding these piles down into the ground near their private well. So they're gonna
Now,
put the bill for
the
25.
the piles that you're referring to, are you talking about these things that they're gonna screw into the ground?
Pile,
They don't
yeah.
screw them, they
The
drive them
bank
right in.
pile
They told us they do.
hydraulical.
They pile drive them right
They bring
in.
a huge machine in to pile drive them in.
That's what your words were.
Georgina Arventides, 207 Bay Road. Say they do agree to do this testing on the water. It passes for some reason, solar goes up. Test in a year, toxic water. What happens then? What happens? What happens if something does happen to our drinking water? We're the ones living there. We're the ones drinking it. Our children are living
There would
across the street from this, and we don't want to be a
likely
science experiment with, especially
a
with
remedial action program.
as far as,
Likely?
And then they could have anchored.
as far as I know, once water is contaminated, drinking water is contaminated, how is it gonna fix? I heard it can't be. It cannot be.
I'd also
Why
like-
are you gonna take a risk? Our lives, our children, would you want your children, your grandchildren
Ma'am,
drinking water
ma'am.
out of maybe?
We have to make a decision
I
based on
understand.
our legislative mandate.
I understand, and I'm very emotional about this. I'm very sorry,
Question.
but
Hi,
nothing happens.
Janine Simmons, 15 West Soy Ave, and this is just, maybe it'll help make everyone feel a little better, I don't know. If this were to go through, and they did do a thing on the wells or whatever remedial thing happens, or whatever, if something has to be done because there was a problem in Run, is that something that this commission could put in as a condition, or would that have to go through another commission as a condition? It's a, you know, I mean, I don't know, I'm just asking, because if it's a condition that can be put in, then, you know, maybe the abutters who have wells would feel a little better. I'm
Just
just
not the
asking, I don't know if that's a part of how you guys do your conditions. I don't know if that falls within your jurisdiction. It's just my curiosity.
Is that something we could put in as a condition?
I mean, you can put in conditions what you think is required to protect the interests of the act. Right, whether they agree to it or they appeal it or DEP upholds it is another story. But you can certainly put in conditions about monitoring and what if and how to fix it and who fixes it and.
All right.
But we're trying to get that information ahead of time before they actually do construction, right? We don't want to find out a year later. So that's where the baseline monitoring and the geotechnical information and whatever, anything else we deliberate on and think we need for them to submit.
Okay.
But right now, so you had the two issues that we had, 2 items that we had requested. That we don't have, so.
Meredith Falconer, 11 Fuller Drive. What is the legislature for the Conservation Commission requiring protecting the drinking water of the Northeast?
The presumption in Wetland Protection Act is if you meet the performance standards for the floodplain, right? They're altering floodplain, they replicate the floodplain. If they were altering wetland and then they replicated it, the presumption is that they would be protecting the drinking water source. So Wetland Protection Act says as long as they meet the performance standards, they're not presumed to have a negative impact.
Even though this is a project that has no comparative or comparison where they're driving these piles many feet into the ground, potentially
correct,
getting close to the barrier that would impact our drinking.
Yeah.
So the current legislation never had this in mind when it was written, is what I'm asking.
Well, I mean, the legislation was written in the 80s.
Well,
so
as it's been
a
out
lot
there
of,
throughout the years.
like Julian said, a lot of things change, the regs change with it. Everything's changing all the time. It's a lot for us to keep up with, and it's a
They
lot
mentioned that
for
they
the
weren't gonna
regulations to
change-
keep
sorry.
up with.
They mentioned they weren't gonna change the size of the battery. 2 months ago in Arizona, 8 firefighters were seriously injured at a fire from a battery that exploded at a solar plant. And they're not gonna change the size of their battery. It was for twice the size. If they reduce the size of the project, the battery should meet the project. Because the other one probably.
Well, when they submit their permit application to the building inspector, the fire department will review that project. And that's probably that is more appropriate for the fire department to make that call about that particular issue.
There's been very little training, if any, from the fire department thus far on this, if I'm not mistaken.
I think they typically get involved when the permit is submitted to the building inspector, and that's when their plans go to the fire department. So I don't think they would normally be that involved right now anyway.
Is there gonna be a MEPA review?
If they are required to get a state permit or state funding and they trip any of the MEPA review thresholds, like the ACEC, then a MEPA review would be required, but MEPA is not a permit, it's a statewide review.
And I believe that government subsidized, part of this is subsidized by the state. So that would require that to be done, right?
It was federal money, I believe. It's not money?
No, it's.
So it's changed now?
No, it's ratepayer, it's funded by the ratepayers.
Ratepayers, okay. So it's not federal
So we're paying for this.
funding, but a state permit is required.
So we're paying for him through us,
Right, pretty much.
Let's confine
Let's
our
keep it
comments to
respectful,
wetland
though,
protection
please.
issues, please.
Just a quick response on the driving piles in wetlands, and the assertion that there's nothing similar to this. There's not a dual-use project like this, but there are lots of piles driven into the ground to support solar projects. And the project in Carver that's been brought up, that's actually in a wetland cranberry bog, is piles driven into wetland bog, and that's within a residential area, actually adjacent to the elementary school in Carver. And that project's causing issues, so I think it's just a.
Do they have personal wells? Does each home have their own well?
Do they have 150 wells around it?
Keep
Right, yeah, and
going through the chairman, please, everybody.
And the other important thing I wanted to mention was that because of the sandy soils here, we do expect to be using primarily screws in this area. We were anticipating using the piles in this area where the encounter hard pan underneath the peat bogs, but in the upper bogs that are sand, the correct application from an engineering perspective is to use the screws. And so that's what we anticipate in this area.
You mean augers? They're not little screws, right?
What is the question?
What is the size of the screws that he's talking about?
The number.
They are 4x4 is the footing that sits on it, right? So
That's the pier.
the auger itself is about this big.
How many?
4.5 inches.
Excuse me, just the total amount they're gonna install into the ground on this reduced project.
Total number of.
There were 40,000, I think, originally.
Yeah, so it'd be about 45%.
What is that?
What number is it?
Well, you now have 500 square feet, is that correct, for the piers?
500 square feet, I believe, is the floodplain number, so that includes the piers as well as the equipment pad and the utility poles.
Okay, racking system and the pole, the couple of telephone poles.
Correct, and the equipment area battery for the state.
How many panels and how
Chairman?
many screws?
Could you ask them the specific number of screws and piles that are going to drive into the ground? It was over 40,000 the original plan. I think that's important because that affects the ground. And how many panels as well? How many solar panels? Yep. That's cute.
Are there other questions that can be fielded?
If I heard them correctly, if you don't pass this tonight, I was a little confused about how that worked out in the beginning. The original program that they had is still in place. This is a new one that they're putting in place. If you don't approve this one, they go back and court on that one. That's how I read it.
That may have been what's said, but this is the plan that we are reviewing now. That's the plan that we're making a decision on. If it goes to DEP for appeal, this is the plan that DEP has to look at.
Can they bring that other plan back here again, the original one?
You mean for a new wetland filing?
Right.
That's correct.
They'd have to stop from the very beginning and go through it from.
Correct, yep, everybody would be notified again, everybody would have to come for a review.
Should we technically have been notified for this?
Changing plan?
No, it's an open hearing.
It's
and
a reduction
it's-
of the plan, so
But you
it's
can
not
revise
technically a
plans
brand.
during a hearing process.
Have the locations changed?
We have all the same concerns we
Yeah,
had before.
yep.
Nothing has changed.
The original number of piers was in the range of what? 'Cause,
Kelly, how many?
I know, we're almost erasing the old plan because this is the plan we're now reviewing. So
How many
I can
pounds?
check that as well, like, that is in my mind, but I don't recall exactly.
Kelly, how many screws original? 40?
It was 45,000 original.
45,000? So we're going to, he just said 45%, so it'll be 20,000.
We'd have to look back at the drawings, I don't have that number on the top of my head.
I think, although I just looked at this very quickly, but it looks like it's around 2,500. That would be probably piers, poles, and
Piers.
equipment, so because I don't have it broken out into.
2,500?
And again, I'd want to confirm that when I.
Okay.
I'd like to
How
make
many
a comment on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Part of what I'm hearing is worries me a little bit that the application is essentially incomplete because they switch gears radically from one proposal to another. What I mentioned in my peer review was that performance standards are vague because although Beals and Thomas went to a tremendous amount of effort to respond to my comments and the commission's comments, they responded to the full build-out. and they didn't respond to this new proposal. So we're missing all sorts of important pieces of information, right down to the number of peers collected. So I think it would be, my recommendation would be that it would be reasonable to ask for another 2 weeks to allow them over the next week to fill these holes and then close the hearing. But at this point, there's a lot of missing information that I think puts the commission in a very difficult position.
So just to clarify, the number of peers and those sorts of data points were not something that we had previously included in the notice of intent application or in supplemental letters. I can derive them because we use that information in our calc summary, so I think there is not information missing in terms of the data points for this project. This project doesn't change the footprint. We're not now in a new area that we hadn't been previously talking about. It only significantly reduces the overall project. Certainly there are portions of our performance standard evaluation that are no longer applicable, in our opinion, the BDW and the bank sections. However, the other performance standard evaluation remains applicable, but with lesser reductions. We continue to meet the performance standards. We've outlined a detailed riverfront area alternatives analysis. None of that information changes with this change in the project, since it is a reduction within the same footprint from our view.
And then all
Still
of the information that is necessary to determine if it complies with the Wetlands Act has been provided. And like I said, we don't have the luxury of another 2 weeks, unfortunately, on this.
Oh, well.
Excuse me, Julian, to the right, or don't do it all?
Do you have
One more
any
question.
other information?
I think it's important that we all know exactly what is going into the ground and above the ground in terms of number of solar panels, number of piles. For them to say, oh, we're just going to put an X amount, I don't think that's appropriate. They've changed the plan, I get it, but they should know exactly what they're going to be putting into the ground. And as butters, we should know that as well, because it will have an impact on our groundwater. I don't think that's appropriate. You come in here and not have that information. Shame on you.
And how many panels?
Do they have
The
any other
panels.
information to submit? Yeah, do they have any other information? Because I think we've reached
I know Mr.
the
Kaddish
end
wants
of our
to
discussion.
Yeah, so any further information that you want to submit? Okay. All right, so I think we can, so you're saying you do not want a continuation of the hearing, is that what you're saying? And if that's the case, then we should close?
Correct.
I mean, we cannot continue without the applicant agreeing to that, is that?
Correct. The commission can't continue a public hearing without the consent of the applicant unless it's within the first 21 days of when they submit the application. So every follow-up meeting, we've had to ask for and get approval for a continuation of the meeting. So they're clearly saying that they're not going to continue the hearing for another 2 weeks and that they want to close the public hearing. So the commission, once they close the public hearing, cannot take any new information in. They can only deliberate on what the applicant has provided them or what anybody's provided for the public record.
It seems like a lot of folks might not have read the emails that were sent to you. I know some of you have. But has anybody read the information that was sent you about this and our concerns? It's a lot of information. And I think as a board member,
It's a lot of information.
you should all have read what was sent to you.
It's all been submitted to the commission, and they'll consider all of that in their deliberations.
And even the gentleman from peer reviews said we should.
Okay, so you're closing public hearing.
So the question about the number of peers is included in the information you submitted already.
So it is in there. It's not something where we had a statement in the notice of intent or supplemental material saying the number of peers is. But in our regulation summary, which is what I was just very quickly and trying also to pay attention to what was being said, so I would want to confirm the number. But when I added it up from the floodplain, since that encompasses the site, it was 2,480 versus 2,500 peers.
The public and the board can't.
All right, so we're then going to close the public hearing. And so we can make a motion. I can consider a motion.
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
For file number 1036?
Yes.
Okay.
Second?
Motion made by Ron, seconded by Dan Doyle. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Abstained.
So any opposed? And we can note. Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is abbreviated notice of intent, notice of resource area delineation, file number 250-1030 for John Quattrochi, East Hodges Street. This has been continued from October and then most recently from April 29th. And it looks like they're requesting a continuance.
Correct. We did an on-site inspection with the applicant, me, and all of the peer reviewers. So they're reviewing that information and coming up with final revised plans for us to review at the next meeting. So they requested a continuance to 6/24.
Make a motion to continue hearing number 250-1030 to June 24th, request of the applicant.
All right, motion made by Ron and seconded by Jean. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. And our next item is concerns notice of intent 250-1032 for Albert Faxon of Oak Street. This has been continued also from October through most recently April 29th. And they are also
Correct.
requesting a continuation. Consider a motion.
I'll make a motion to continue file number 250-1032 to the June 24th meeting as requested by the applicant.
A motion made by Ron, seconded by
Second.
Jean. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. And then our last item, for hearings at least, is file number 250-1035 concerning Honda and Capital Partners Leonard Street reconstruction. And where did we get any kind of, oh, we have an applicant, at least a representative of the applicant. How are you guys tonight? Good.
I didn't miss that. I stayed outside.
All right, so we have, well, Mark, why don't you introduce yourself and go from there?
Again, Mark did with Conrad Engineering Group, Jeff O'Neill and John O'Neill with Conrad as well. So we've been working on responding to H&W comments for this is the Leonard Street widening project, Leonard Street. I do have these resubmittal with me. I would like to hand out a document and just provide some information regarding it to the board to help them review it over the next, between now and the next hearing. We understand, obviously, you need your time to review submittal documentation, if that's okay. I'd like to just, and this is exactly what's being submitted in its 2 hard copies.
Okay, thank you. That's fine.
I'll run through it, hit just a couple topics more specifically, and let you guys have any questions.
Yeah, I'm good.
So this is, what I've done is compiled, normally we have a narrative, project narrative, we have a response to comments, and then any supporting documentation from my wetland scientist. We've compiled into one document, so the page numbers can go right through, so when you are reviewing, you can just document the page number. So as you see, so we're providing a project narrative, a response to comments. And then ECR is Brad Holmes's company. He had some specific responses for the environmental related items, as well as he had an updated wetland replication plan. Just as your pages 1 through 4 is just, so it goes through it, you know, a summary of the wetlands impacts, a summary of the FEMA floodplain impacts, documentation, as well as the culvert replacement section. One item that is new is the table. There's a page 5 has a pretty detailed table on our proposed replacements for the culverts and how they meet the standards, or how we're trying to meet the standards to the extent feasible and practical for the project. And if we didn't meet the standards, you know, how close we got and what we're trying to do on the culverts. We'll go a little further into those in a minute. As well as then it goes into the riverfront analysis section on page 7. Summarizes the work in riverfront. We again summarizes how we meet the standards for riverfront and for the redevelopment information, as well as the wetland replication area, which is an ECR document further on. And then for your use, we submitted a response to comments. Each one, I don't think I can go through every single comment right now, but they're horizontally, Witten's latest comments are in blue, and red is our responses. Regarding the replication area, Brad Holmes responded to those. Regarding stormwater and culverts section, you know, I responded on the engineering items. We believe the majority of the items are, a lot of them are technical in relevance. You know, the scale was wrong here, or a typo on the floodplain data. You know, we made the revisions for those items. Again, I want to touch base a little bit further on the culverts. It's the same riverfront impacts we've summarized. We're meeting the standards on riverfront. It's the housekeeping, you know, it's paperwork. We've gone through those comments. And stormwater was all, most of it was closed out. However, I suggested changes to see that we feel we've answered the question or concern from Horsland Witten. The one item that is kind of subjective is the culverts. I'd like to go a little bit deeper into. I know I've kind of explained them in the past, but I just wanted to go over them again with the commission and Jennifer. Trying to almost seek some guidance on where, you know, our current proposal. I'll definitely explain the current proposal and just go through culverts, kind of a little bit more in detail, just to make sure our responses are thorough and it's what, you know, if we can all agree on the type of culverts being replaced and why we're working on that type of proposal. So, if you recall or not, the project has 3 culvert replacements. There's an existing 12-inch corrugated metal pipe in this area. Basically, you can kind of almost see, I believe in the past there was a man-made drainage. You can see there's a straight line through the woods and a straight line through here. So it's a 12-inch corrugated metal pipe. It's on a drainage ditch. It's also per definition, it's an intermittent stream because it does, you know, part of wetlands do drain through and connect to more wetlands. So it's both a drainage ditch culvert and an intermittent stream, as well as there's another culvert here, which drains areas throughout. This is the watershed area for culvert 2. It's again another 12-inch corrugated metal pipe, which drains to this ditch as well, and is conveyed eventually into the wetlands and into the Canoe River, which is further down. So that's also, by definition, an inlet stream. As well as number 3 is an actual perennial stream. Drains this wetland area to the south again and connects again down, eventually down to the Canoe River. So what we've done is basically taken 2 different approaches. For these 2 intermittent stream culverts, we're currently proposing, it kind of hasn't changed too much from the original proposal, replacing the 2 12-inch pipes with elliptical 14-inch wide pipes by 19 inches high. And the purpose behind that and what we've outlined both in the table and our description is, since it is conveying both the stream but as well as the drainage in the area, we've proven that we do not want to modify the hydrology of the entire area. And it's also identified in the stream crossing standards that we don't want to potentially make a large bridge or span for the standards because it could affect the hydrology upstream. We don't want to potentially affect flooding downstream. And it is, as you can see on the table, it is an improvement under the openness factor, which is the length times, it's the number, basically the end has, by providing the elliptical, we're really improving the openness, we're improving the possibility for wildlife to navigate that, because it's a much shallower pipe. The material itself being concrete lends itself to that. As well as these 2 culverts, this one's already basically dry because of the trickle. On the outlet end, there's an outlet drop of about 9 inches, so the water, what that means is the water just comes out of the culvert and just dumps down. We're proposing to fix those conditions, as well as the inlet side are silted, and so the proposal has matching the inlet inverts to the existing stream bed, which is an improvement over what's there today for both of those culverts. I'm only going to talk about this one just because we did confirm water line depth. There was a kind of a question throughout this project that, did the water line just barely get above these culverts, below these culverts? The water line has been confirmed to be below the culverts at about the top of the water line. It is about 5 feet deep. There's minimal clearance between them, and we had the water department available when we did the inspection of the water line, and at their guidance, they do not, in the current condition of the overall town water system, it's pretty obvious to everybody that there's issues that they're working through, and they, at this point, have guided us that they're not allowing us to modify that water line. So we need to fit our proposal for these replacement culverts within the restraints of finished, roughly the finished pavement where the water line is, where the existing culverts are. So what we've proposed on these 2, the ellipticals, does fit well within where that water line is. So, and these are provided right on the plans now. This is a section, this is a profile. The water line, the new pipe will fix the outlet drops. The sewer and gas can fit in above that.
Mark, can you explain the pitch to the existing pitch with the new pitch that's there?
Yeah, so right now there's a silted up condition, so the water comes in and drops into the existing pipe, so currently there's an inlet drop. We make sure that the stream bed comes in evenly with the invert of the new pipe, and then the outlet would also be adjusted. Right now the water just dumps out into the stream. So it'd be a significant improvement. That stream bed wants to go straight through the pipe. And again, we do have,
So where is the town water line?
the town water line is under the edge of pavement over here,
Okay.
underneath.
Okay.
Yes.
And those other two circles, what are those?
Those is, we're running a force main down the middle of the street.
Okay.
And Columbia Gas is required to put, so that'll be, both of those can fit in above the new pipe.
So those are new installations?
Correct, yes. So that is, it's documented in the submitted information, and I'll go on to the third culvert first, and then I'll get any feedback from the board. So the third culvert is a perennial, so a reminder, these are intermittent streams, and one of them's already has no more flow in it, and the other one is kind of in a submerged state, so we'll be fixing that as well. So the last one is on the perennial stream over here. And what we're proposing for that is a box culvert. Basically as large as, vertically it's definitely as large as we can fit in there. And then horizontally, it's wide enough to match. So this is the incoming stream. The mouth of the stream is about 5 feet wide at the existing culvert. So we match, we'd actually, the opening we're providing is 6 feet, which is exactly the crossing span, so that's an actual standard. The standards recommend a minimum of 1.2 times the bank full width, so we have a bank of about 5 feet, we're going to provide the 6-foot culvert. And the restraints that we're kind of confined to is the existing stream bed elevation, and all these things are shown in inverting elevations. So between the stream bed elevation, the water line, and the finished grade, we've proposed a 1-foot high opening by 6 feet wide box culvert to improve the culverts as not to damage the water line. So we feel that it does need to have a bottom on it to spread the weight, as well as to get the gas line at a depth of 30 inches that they require. We've come up with this design as a most practical and feasible upgrade. Definitely the width and how it would fit into that area is, the width is definitely the way it wants, and we're providing as much vertical space as we possibly can under the site constraints. Just to give you an idea of what, if we were to replace with, to meet the standards, based on the openness ratios and other documents, if you were to replace a solid bottom and fill in, because you want to mimic the stream base as best as possible. So if you were to replace with a solid box culvert, you need a height of 5 feet in order to get a 3-foot opening to make the openness calculation work, and that would require the water line to be located almost at a depth of 10 feet. And for one, the water department does not want that U-shaped scenario, as well as once you get down to about 7 feet, we've done some test pits or borings, not test pits, but borings, and the bearing capacity is poor once you get to a certain depth, and that depth is around 7 or 8 feet. So it's unfeasible, and also due to the height, both the force main and gas main would have to be down about 10 feet. Columbia Gas doesn't install gas at that elevation. Another scenario would be footings, which could be broken at the water. Actually, no, the water line would still have to go under the footing scenario. And it's a 40-foot long culvert. Each one of these, an 8-foot section is almost 20,000 pounds, so we just, to try to attempt, I've analyzed trying to actually meet standards 100%, and it's just not feasible for those, for that component. So what I'm trying to obtain is some feedback right now from the commission, from Jennifer. If this culverts seem appropriate replacements for the project, if I'd like to see something else, your feedback on that. I do have, individually, I don't know how familiar you are with the stream crossing standards. I do have a copy of those. There's a couple of sections in there I could cover just to define these a little bit better. And just lets you know how we feel we do meet even the stream crossing standards, because there's a very specific section in the standards for replacement culverts. If Leonard Street didn't exist, we would have, we'd be able to put new utilities where new utilities can go. We could put a bridge or, but given the existing conditions of the site, we feel, and this being a perennial stream, a nice box culvert, and the intermittent streams, a decent improvement, but, away from the full box culverts. We feel it's appropriate for the area to ensure we're not offsetting what's already there. If you read the stream crossing standards, they are just guidelines. If anybody wants to copy this, right in the very regulation requirements, it says these are standards, not regulations. Local, state, federal regulatory authorities can decide on the degree that these standards are adopted. There's other items. It's pretty specific when you're replacing culverts that there's very specific areas that you don't want to, even if undersized culverts block movement of organisms and materials over time, rivers and streams adjust to the hydraulic and hydrologic changes caused by these structures. So what we're, to replace every one of these with a box culvert, I feel it's much easier to upset what's currently there. You don't want to, if you provide a lot more area for water to drain through, you could possibly flood out below, drain out, change the hydrology above. So we feel it's a good fit for the 3 existing culverts. I'd like some feedback on that, because I do have to, it's on the plans, but I've summarized what we are proposing in the response to comments, and provided the table and the documentation. However, every specific portion wouldn't comment regarding some of the design, since it is subjective, and actually professionally disagree with some of the wording on the comments. I'd rather present it this way and say why these culverts and why the replacement projects would work for this site, and get your feedback on what we proposed. Concerns or suggestions? Jennifer probably has a concern or suggestion.
No comments. Yeah.
I'm looking for your feedback.
Yeah. It's a little difficult to do because we're just getting that tonight, and I know you sent me something Friday, but it wasn't in Friday. So looking at your email today, and the plans are significantly improved and will make the decision a lot easier, right? That's what we've been asking for, and so now you're providing that, and we just need to have the time to evaluate it, right? So I'll make one clarification, correction. The stream crossing standards actually started with the Army Corps, right? Before that became something, before they came the Massachusetts stream crossing standards. And then somewhere around 2014, they actually did become regulations. That's a performance standard under bank. So I know you quoted a section there, but that was written before the regulatory change. So that they are actually regulations. It's not just the standard. The document you're using is still a very good guidance, but it has been changed. So just to clarify that. And then in your email, you suggested a working group with Horsley Witten to go through the letter and the new plans that you're providing tonight. And I think that's probably a good way to go on the culverts. Obviously, we want to give you an answer as soon as possible, but this is a lot of information, and you just touched on the basics for tonight. So to be able to go through the table and all the other information you provided, I don't know that we can do that tonight.
I just had a quick question on what the existing conditions were at Culvert 3. What's a CMP 21-inch?
Corrugated metal pipe, it's just that,
okay.
that ridge.
Oh, so that's what's going in at the other two, the first two?
Existing is corrugated metal pipes, there's two 12-inch
okay.
existing, so
Okay.
it's just a 12-inch.
So it's the same thing.
That, that rigid
Yeah.
pipe, and then a 21-inch at the other.
Oh, okay.
So we can contact Horsley and Witten and see when we can get a meeting together.
I do have just, I only gave 2 hard copies, but I do have, just, since I have them, what you want with them is just to help you review your letters. Just, I said the same thing.
Thank you.
If you guys ever want a PDF or anything you want to open on the screen, you have all that stuff there. Just let you know.
Right now, that laptop is bigger than my computer screen, so hard copies are needed.
Just, I didn't go through all the other, where we're changing the wetlands and, but if anybody has any questions about that either.
I have sort of since this is a very casual comment, but since we're not supposed to discuss this outside, I mean, Jen, I assume that culverts won't take care of the objections that we had to not, to their not having designed this environmentally well enough for the previous.
Well, this is a new, different application.
So we really.
Right, you're reviewing this.
So we really have to look at everything before we can talk about it all.
And you're reviewing this individually as a road
Right.
widening project. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, my question was from ignorance. Sorry, yes.
Okay.
So at this point, we consider a continuation?
Oh, I have one thing. Did you receive a letter from the highway department? Is that something that should be read into? It was back a couple months ago from Keith.
If it was months ago,
We just need to, I saw that.
you said it months ago? It was about the depth, right? Not doing full depth reclamation, you're good with 6 or 7 inches? Was that the letter you're talking
Yeah, it
about?
was during, when Horsley and Witten was, determining just the scope of drainage and how the Norton stormwater bylaw was affected by, or how the project was affected by the bylaw. I think he just had reviewed the plans.
Probably 3 weeks ago, a month ago?
Well, let's just make sure she has that copy and just,
I don't have one.
Oh, 3 weeks ago. Okay, I'll check. I don't remember off the top of my head right now.
Any questions from commission members? Any further questions? Any from members of the audience? So we can, but basically you have to review this for the next meeting. So you're okay with the continuation till June 24th?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to continue 250-1035 to June 24th.
Second?
Motion made by Dan Pearson, seconded by Ron, that we continue to June 24th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Okay, thank you.
Motion carries.
We have a couple COCs we have to do, and then we have to
Oh,
deliberate.
COC. Okay. But we don't have any orders of conditions, right? Okay. So you have, the next item is COC for 250-968, William Brandon on Taunton Avenue.
Correct. He requested that. We only recently got the wetland replication information, and that requires at least 2 growing seasons. So you can't give him a certificate of compliance. If you remember, he asked for that a couple of months ago, but hadn't complied with the wetland replication planting yet. And so we told him, if your permit's about to expire, take care of that before June 1, and then we would entertain a motion to, a request for an extension. And then that would give him the time he needs to finish his project and do the 2 years of monitoring on the wetland replication that he's required to do. So it's basically a denial on the request for a certificate of compliance, but give him the extension so that he can finish everything and then ask for that certificate later on.
So it's an actual denial and not a just table? But a motion
Yeah, because you have to
deny.
make a decision. Yeah.
All right, well, and it will be spelled out exactly why it's
Yep.
being denied.
He was here. I talked to him before the meeting.
I see, okay.
He's aware of it.
All right, so we can consider a motion to deny the request for 250-968.
Move we deny the COC for 250-968 on the
Motion.
grounds that it's extended.
Motion made by Dan Doyle, seconded by
I'll second. Go ahead, Gene.
I'll second.
Gene. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, and then if you just want to skip, while we have this file out, down to the extension and grant him an extension, and then you just have to decide if it's 1 year or 2 years or 3 years.
But
Those are your
you-
choices.
You had mentioned that he has to have data for 2 growing seasons, so it would make sense that it would be 2 years, yes?
Okay.
Make a motion on file number 250-968 to grant a 2-year extension.
Motion made by Ron and seconded by
Second.
Dan Pearson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. That's the denial.
Pass that over.
And we have a signature page for the extension, yes?
That's what you did. There's no form for a denial for a COC.
Oh.
That's just going to be a separate letter, and this
Okay.
is,
Got it. So we're now on request for a certificate of compliance for file
so
number
this one should be the
250-971.
certificate of compliance,
John.
not the order of conditions. So if you
That was
can-
fine.
Company, all right.
Thanks.
Of 17 Dean Street. So the project is complete. I guess we have partial report.
17th Street, correct.
And now we can.
Correct, everything's stabilized, everything is posted the way it's supposed to be done. So-
Releasing the bond is a separate vote, or by,
You could do them both together.
all right,
That's
so
not
we
an
can
issue.
consider a motion to issue a full certificate for 971 in combination with releasing the bond partially.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion made by Dan Pearson, seconded by Ron, to issue a full certificate of compliance and release the bond. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. And our next item is a request for a full certificate on 250-1007 concerning Stephen and Kara Newcomb of 150R Main Street. And that also is a ditto as far as full and releasing the bond.
Correct.
Second.
Motion made by Ron, seconded by Dan Pearson to issue a full certificate and release the bond. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Don't leave without that. She's just printing it for us. She's printing it for us, so don't leave until we sign it. Thank you. Perfect.
Two things to sign. Because we have,
So far, you've signed everything. We just need that one paper left.
okay. But we're releasing these two bonds. We have two where we're,
Yeah, you don't need to sign the bond release. That's just a letter we do. Yeah.
All right, so we have these minutes?
Review minutes were in your email.
Yes. Well, I didn't print them. But I'm comfortable with voting. So minutes of 4/8, I don't have the printout of who is here and who wasn't.
Everybody was here, right?
I don't print it. I don't check. That's up for you guys.
All right, so let's see.
Thanks.
Oh yeah, everybody was here. Okay.
All right, so
So is that the one that was like 15 minutes long?
that agenda, I don't think so. That might have been 5:20 where we were in and out of here. I don't think.
All right, anybody have any questions, comments?
I'll make a motion to approve the draft of the minutes for the April 8th, 2019 meeting as submitted.
Motion made by Ron, seconded by?
second.
Gene, all those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Approve those minutes, now we have 429. And again, everybody was here. How strange is that? Anybody have any comments about the minutes of 429?
I'll make a motion to approve the draft of the April 29th, 2019 meeting minutes as submitted.
Motion made by Ron, seconded by?
Second.
Gene, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. And 520, do we have those? Is that the,
That might have been, I think that was the quick meeting.
But unless anybody has any glaring comments, is that it? No, that's it. Are we comfortable making a motion to approve 520?
I'll make a motion to approve the May 20th, 2019 minutes draft as submitted.
Motion made by Ron, seconded by Gene. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Now, 9/23, I don't think I could have, I was able to attend, wasn't that a Thursday?
Yeah, that was a Thursday, so you weren't there.
Lisa, Julian, and Jean were here. I'll make a motion to,
Well, we only have 3, but,
Do you have 4? No?
no, we don't have 4
Scott
people.
is here, and using him now.
Yeah,
So I think you'll have to put off the food.
right, so no quorum, so that'll be on the next meeting.
All right.
Old business, it's just a notification to you that we had the DEP on-site meeting for the 2 appeals for 250-1027 and 250-1039. The Turtle Crossing note, release of the remaining consulting fee, we're just waiting for confirmation on the amount, so that letter's not ready yet, that could be next time.
Now, that's
There.
on Newland Street, right?
Correct. Their permit has expired, so we still have some of their remaining consulting engineer money, and that needs to go back to them.
But nothing ever happened.
Correct. New business is just a reminder about Founders Day. This Saturday, we're hosting just like a community work service morning, 8 a.m. to about noon. So if anybody can show up, that would be awesome.
After Founders Day?
Founders Day in the morning at Edith Reed. If you want to come rake leaves with us and do some yard work, you're welcome.
So it looks like we're ready to consider an adjournment.
Ooh, you are up to deliberation on what we closed.
Okay? Well, it's very straightforward now, isn't it?
So we closed the DOT project. So Ron gets the new deliberation paper up above you. Your new cheat sheet of what to do for deliberation.
We got the,
Yeah. Changing our format a little to make sure we're deliberating, so there's no question about what the draft order will be when you see it.
Well, the issues outstanding, are you talking about the 123 project?
Yep. Yep. So start with DOT. Any specific conditions? Do you have a general consensus about whether you're approving with conditions or denying the project?
Well,
That's it.
I'm gonna say my own personal view is it can be approved with appropriate conditions. And there wasn't anything there that I felt was highly controversial. Is that a fair statement?
It's just how to make sure that the culverts at the end of the whole thing that they're upgrading, how to make sure that those are actually fixed, cleaned properly.
Can you condition that?
Yes, you can.
But so you're talking about the areas where, if I understand it correctly, Division 5 has to come into
Correct.
play.
But they're all DOT. Right now, there's a wetland violation because the areas are being eroded and there's sedimentation into the wetland because of those culverts. So you can do an enforcement situation, which nobody wants, or you add it to the existing permit, knowing that they're already trying to cooperate with District 5 and that there's at least 3 years before anything has to be done.
But District 5 can do those repairs before this project begins.
They certainly can, but what happens in 3 years if they haven't done that? And there's still violations, or they're improving all of this other drainage, which may make those broken and filled culverts worse, which would impact the wetland. So that's what you have to think about. So.
Well, why would we not condition them to fix these culverts? I mean, why? That's good.
And, I mean, can we condition it that those portions get arranged to be repaired before
Mhm.
the main project is done? I mean, I would think it could be,
Yes.
so.
There's 3 years before they actually are able to start there, so it's certainly
And that's just when
appropriate.
they start moving the utilities 3 years away.
Right.
So, yes, okay, we condition the repair of those structures.
Okay. And then just to clarify the part about the SWIP, that they are going to, you're going to condition, it is submitted to the Conservation Commission for comment and approval before they start work.
Okay.
Do we need motions here?
And then just the illicit discharge statement. I'm just ticking on the ones that would be different from our standard boilerplate set of conditions.
No,
Which is what we're supposed to be doing as
we
deliberations.
deliberate and then we vote on the final.
Yeah, you're gonna vote next time when you see the draft.
Now, the illicit discharge just has to do with people who have been illegally hooking up to the drainage system and putting their basement sumps into it or something like that, yes?
Correct. So for DOT, it would be if you're out there working and you find an illicit discharge, then you need to notify Highway and Conservation. And then under the bylaw, Highway would take care of working with the landowner to correct that issue, unless it was a DOT pipe that was not in correctly.
But this is not going to be common, presumably.
No, we shouldn't see it.
Yeah, you throw a common.
But it wouldn't be the first time that, they opened up a roadway project and somebody has snuck in a washing machine, into a catch basin. But they catch it, they correct it, that's all. This is really just notification that DOT has to notify us under our bylaw.
So that,
Those are the main points on DOT.
all right, I will do that.
Okay.
Anybody else? No? And now.
What else do so we closed Bay Road. That's the one.
Well, yeah.
So, what do you guys want to do with Bay Road?
Well, I think, my own opinion, we are bound to approve it. And obviously, with the level of controversy, there will be abutters appealing, and probably the applicant appealing. But as I understand it, they're within compliance with the Wetlands Protection Act.
Okay, so does anyone think that there's missing information? And if there's missing information, is it something that you feel comfortable conditioning, or you need it for the decision now? That might be the easiest way to start this.
Well, with regard to the water testing, that can be a condition. The initial condition, and then.
The geotechnical study?
Okay, and you're comfortable with that being a condition? I'm not saying one way or the other is better, we're deliberating and I'm trying to make sure I have it accurately so I can draft it. So you're confident that that's okay, or
Those would be conditions in my mind.
Okay.
If I may, I'm both concerned for the public, but also this commission. And if we can cover ourselves by just the inclusion of a paragraph or two saying that the water is safe. I know it's not that.
What is it?
You're not gonna do that.
Ourselves about? I mean,
I don't know that you can do that.
In my job, I run up against people who are afraid of the future because we can't predict it. Rather than having the attitude of, well, we'll gather information and then we'll find out the best solution. I think there was a lot of alarm, and I didn't hear that there was justification for that alarm myself, with both the knowledge I have of these things and the data submitted. I mean, we all live with risks. even driving down the highway, whether you're gonna come up against a drunk driver or whatever. So, we cannot create a condition where we are gonna guarantee there is no risk ever. That doesn't exist.
That's true.
And to have
I
people
agree.
clamor, insisting that we prove there is no risk is not a reasonable human condition.
Well, you know, the gentleman, I forget his name, who was representing the applicant, did mention zinc, so.
Now, bear in mind, zinc is a necessary nutrient in our bodies. And yes, you can be poisoned by zinc if you are a foundry worker and exposed to the fumes. But, you know, there are things that wash out of rocks all the time, and we drink the water that we pull out of those rocks. So this is no different than any other natural element. In water, it has to be monitored, and if it's within acceptable limits, fine. If it's not, but I just cannot fathom how those things put on the surface are going to affect the groundwater. And on top of that, that's the river. That's where the groundwater breaks out. It doesn't go down from there, it comes out from there. It comes out from the uplands at the river and goes out to sea.
I mean, part of it is also is conveying this to the people who, the townspeople who are concerned, not all of whom have your comfort with
And
science.
I guess that's part of my impatience with this, is that I can't fathom where the concern is coming from. You can't see that project from those houses. You can't hear it. I just don't understand this.
Part of it is, as we would both admit, the novelty, and far be it from me to be in that group of people who are afraid of the future. I only want the future. I'm as anti-conservative
I'm not sure I
as
would
they
agree
come.
with that, but anyway, that's a different issue. But, you know, we can only make decisions based on the risks that we can define. And unless you can show me why putting those zinc-coated iron things in the ground is going to be a problem, which is what we do everywhere else in the environment,
Highway posts are galvanized.
What's that?
Highway posts are galvanized, some will go
exactly
15, 20
right.
feet into the ground.
I'm afraid I just do not share the alarm. But
I like the idea myself.
The idea of
if I'm allowed to say that.
But
of
you
these
know, once
solar-powered,
again, we have to focus on the elements that are going to be in the.
Well, your job isn't to like it or dislike it,
I know
or
that.
want
I'm
it
just-
or
I'm
not
just
want it. Your
saying
job is just
that-
to make sure it complies with the regulations.
And that's kind of what I think the two items, that can be conditions, information to be put forth, with the continuing monitoring, groundwater quality. Well, the water quality monitoring it's not groundwater, it's the bog water, yes?
It sounds that way.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been a lot easier if they had put some ideas forward, like, hey, we wouldn't mind monitoring for this.
Well, I
Instead
understand,
of,
but
having to try to guess what it might be and then.
But everything else, I mean, from the regulatory information available, these are not regulatable as wetlands. So if they were, we would have to deny, but they're not. So we can't deny on that basis. And as I understand it, we have to approve because there's no other specific violation of the act.
Yeah, if they're meeting all the performance standards, then under the law, the presumption is that they will not have a negative impact on groundwater. But there are certainly ways that we talked about tonight that we can condition the project to make sure that doesn't happen. If that's what the commission chooses. The last thing you really need to talk about on Bay Road is, do you agree with the applicant's hypothesis about the upland bogs? Do you
Well-
think they gave you enough information for you to say, yes, those bogs were created in an upland, and whether or not you agree with the decision from Hanson that said if it was built in an upland, then it would not be jurisdictional? You need to decide if you agree with that or not.
Jen, didn't you give some sort of special consideration to the soil? The Bristol, is it the Bristol County Soil Survey?
Yeah,
But,
that
That
showed,
only says likely in upland. Okay, well, is that?
well, the soils that the Bristol County Soil Survey showed were upland soils. Like there was all Windsor soils. So those are all upland soils. So the only, not the only question, but the previous plan from the 80s that showed the bypass canal construction, right? There were some spots on it in the green. You can pass it around. That's my best approximation of where there might have been wetlands based on the topo. But it's such an old plan that you can barely read, and some of them look isolated.
Well,
So they might not have been jurisdictional wetlands.
Exactly.
And then do you carve out those little sections and say, okay, the rest of the bog is upland, but not this 200 square foot area, or just whatever we're assuming is correct?
But what's
So you
submitted-
can look at it. That's
Yeah,
the
but
best I could
what's
sketch.
submitted here doesn't show a.
Right, because we're
Topographic.
comparing an aerial photograph of a USGS topo with an actual site surveyed plan of the property. So those are completely different, because one is
But
going to
those-
have significantly more detail than the other.
But those are now bogs, yes?
The green is what was there, what was drawn on the bypass canal plan before the bogs were built. So this is the bogs on top, just to see if
Well,
it was built in an upland or a wetland. But that's, in the absence of what they're providing us, that's the best I could draft.
Yep, I used to walk those bogs a couple of times when I was on Bay Road. And I live not too far from there.
Okay.
well, it's gonna be difficult to, if all of the soils are upland soils, it's going to be difficult for us to logically maintain that, oh no, but they were wetlands anyway. Is it not?
In a couple locations, only because of the topo showing that it's the same elevation as the adjacent wetland. Roughly the same. I mean, if you look at the plans, you can barely read them, so.
I have a question about attachment A, and this shows why one should be specific about words. In the attached case, Mass DEP affirms a cranberry bog as upland, not the cranberry bogs, but what is, I'm not sure what's being said there.
It's not a very clear decision.
Alright, well, you know what?
Right.
I have to get up
It's
very
not.
early in the morning.
Why do you say that?
I don't think that discussing this more is going to bring clarity, but I have no difficulty if the soils are upland, which is kind of hard data, and this is difficult data to defend, that we're kind of bound to call them upland. And, the chips are gonna fall where they may, because it's clearly not gonna be, our decision is not the last decision. this one.
It's not gonna be on this one. Somebody's gonna appeal it one way or the other. So
Everybody.
we've known that all along, but we still have to make sure that we're making the best decision that we can, and that's what you're doing tonight. So we just need a consensus about the upland bogs, whether or not you agree with that, so I know what to write for your draft.
You think they're up?
In the absence of any good data before the bogs were constructed, the soil does seem to indicate that it was an upland area.
Well, then it's an upland area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the aerial photographs from '94, which we didn't submit, but I have them over in my area.
Do you have enough copies?
Maybe vegetation, yeah. It's
See, aerial photographs, is it just like the Google Earth timeline or different?
They're color infrareds, so but it's not part of the record.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't make the copy and submit it for part of the record, but they're color infrareds, and so the evergreen forests show up as bright red.
Oh, okay.
And so it looks pretty bright red when I look at it.
Are we happy with that deliberation?
Okay, so you're all in agreement with that? Okay. Yes, now you can close. You can adjourn.
We're looking for a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
And we'll.
Okay.
Hold on.